It's the week before Christmas for NFL draft fans, my favorite time of the entire year, and it's the most important offseason in Chicago Bears history. Most of my content here is quick and easy to digest, but for the NFL draft, I like to provide as much bonus content as I can for those who want to watch it. Today is my biggest video ever. I have multiple guests and a surprise special guest, so buckle up, get your popcorn ready. If you don't have time, bookmark this and come back later. It's time for the Swift Sports NFL Draft Special, previewing the Chicago Bears 2023 draft.
With the 11th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, my Chicago Bears select Justin Fields, quarterback, Ohio State.
With the 39th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, Chicago Bears select DB from Washington, Kyler Gordon.
The Chicago Bears select Jaquan Brisker, defensive back, Penn State.
Swifty in the house!
What's up, guys? I got my man Aldo in the house from Barroom Network. This is my guy. Honestly, one of the best in the business to do it. What he does over there at the Barroom is nothing short of something special. He brings people together. He brings fans on, and there's so much content coming out over there nonstop. It's crazy. Aldo, it's a pleasure to talk with you, my man.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. You know, I'm in great admiration of the stuff that you're doing over at the Swift Sports Network. Outstanding videos almost daily. There's fresh material. There's reports. Anytime a Chicago Bears fan needs news, information on anything that's broken, you go over to Swift, and he's got you covered with analysis, opinion, and just great productions as well. So I'm really a big admirer of your work.
Love it, man. Love it. So we're here today to talk about the NFL draft. You guys will be watching this on April 20th, about a week before the draft. I'd say right now, in this lull that we're in, it's a tough situation of the offseason. There's just such a long period of time from free agency to the draft where fans are kind of on edge. I'm just so ready for this draft. That being said, we've talked all along. This is probably one of the biggest off seasons in Bears history. And for Ryan Poles, this is incredibly important. And it's something you mentioned to me as well. You think it's really important that Ryan Poles does a great job during this draft and caps off this off season. So if you want to share some of your thoughts on that, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, this is clearly going to be a signature moment for Ryan Poles. What he has to do here, he's got to hit on starters in multiple picks. We know what his plan was last year. He wanted to decimate the roster, clear it all out, and really there wasn't a focus on winning in terms of his job. His focus, first and foremost, was in clearing out salary cap space and bringing in young, long shot players who could potentially make the team in year 2 and 3. But his number one priority was to set up for a 2023 draft and free agency. We've seen how he's attacked free agency. It's been modest, but planned and methodical. He's added speed at the linebacker position. There wasn't value at the defensive line positions, at least yet. I mean, he's picked up a couple of defensive linemen, but not, the stellar picks, stellar names that we were hoping. Nonetheless, what we're hoping to see now with this draft is he's got to hit with this first round pick. And a lot of people, including myself, are hoping that he trades down, because now that he's traded the first overall pick for a first round caliber wide receiver and DJ Moore, he now has to move down and even further from 9 and pick up one of those 3 offensive linemen, Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, or Anton Harrison. I'm really high on. I know a lot of people are high on Darnell Wright. I'm not quite as high on him, but I wouldn't scoff if he's a member of the Chicago Bears at the end of this draft. And then he needs to target defensive linemen coming up. That's the strategy I would like to see him approach. What he's going to do, I have no clue. We've got the Barroom Network. Greg Gabriel has some sources inside Halisaw, but everybody is tight-lipped about what is happening, and so it's anybody's guess at this point. But I really do think that Poles has to hit. And if I can go on here, he really has to hit 2 in day 3. We just did a show recently where we examined the drafts that led up to the 1985 Super Bowl teams, and there were players like Richard Dent, Hall of Famer, had the club record with sacks before Robert Quinn broke it. He was a 7th-round draft pick, and maybe even later than that. And so you've got to find star players in day 3. They're out there. They're not many. It's a needle in a haystack. But at the very least, you've got to find some starters in day 3, and that will propel your team to faster maturation for the Super Bowl games that we hope to be enjoying in the near future.
Yeah, I love it, man. I couldn't have said that better myself, but it's an incredibly important draft for Ryan Poles. I think he has partially mitigated a little bit of the risk by acquiring DJ Moore. I've talked about that a little bit, to where if he did miss, it does allow him a risk to like draft a Jalen Carter, be a little bit risky. But like you said, this draft's important. He's tore down this roster, and now he's got to bring in at least 3 starters. I'd say probably 4 or 5 you guys you want who could be starters in the future at least. Maybe not day 1, but you want those guys who are talented and can be building blocks on this roster. And I love the fact that this class is really deep at defensive line, like you said. Day 2 is probably the most important day in my. We only have 1 pick day 1, that number 9. I hope we trade down. We have 3 picks on day 2 right now. If we can somehow get a 4th pick on day 2, that's where a chance where we could bring in 4 young players, core players for the future that can be starters. And the same range we got Brisker and Gordon last year. So if you think about that, I think this year it might even be a little bit deeper in that 20 to 50 range, where you might even be able to get more talented players. So I love that, man.
Yeah, and regarding the second round, I think it would really be great for us fans and the team if Poles can get back up to early in the second round, because when in that 32nd pick, that's the first pick of the second round, because the Dolphins forfeited their first round pick. You're going to see first round caliber talent at 32, 33, 34, 35. And so if you can move back into that area via trade, you could potentially be getting a defensive lineman who was overlooked in the first round. I did one mock draft out of about the dozen that I did, and Miles Murphy was actually there at 33 of the second round. Now that's unlikely to happen, given the guy's potential to be an elite NFL lineman. There have been some
Somebody's
concerns.
going to fall, though.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's going to fall. And if I could deviate for just one moment, I would alter the strategy if running back Jahmyr Gibbs is available early in the second round. He's the one running back in this team that I would deviate my plan from and to acquire, because he is first round talent, because he is the kind of guy who can take the onus of Justin Fields' own running off of Justin Fields. He's a great pass catcher. He's electrifying. He's got that explosive speed that can break runs. We haven't had a running back with explosive 4.3 speed in quite a long time with this franchise, and I'd love to see one return to this team. I think it really would help out this offense tremendously. And if we don't get a Jahmyr Gibbs in the second round, then day 3 has a lot of possibilities with speedsters that could really help, who wouldn't be backstack and carry a workload in a game, but can get in there for 15 carries, whether it's returns, pass catching, and carries, and give you the opportunity to have some explosive plays. So explosive players at the running back and wide receiver position. I'd love to see the Bears come out of this draft with somebody who runs that 4.4 lower speed.
I love that. And Jahmyr Gibbs isn't talked about enough. I hear a lot of comments about Bijan Robinson, and I do think Bijan is, he's quite possibly a generational talent, but if he's a 1A and Gibbs is right there at 1B, he's a guy that I compare a lot to Alvin Kamara. People are weird with comparisons sometimes. I always look for skill set. He has a similar skill set of Alvin Kamara. He can make people miss. He's electrifying. You said it. He's going to catch passes out of the backfield. If he's there in the second round, I'm 100% with that. That's a guy where I'm not a draft or running back in the first round guy, but if you can get a first round player in the second round and you have multiple second round picks, That's a guy who can change the look of our offense. That's just something that David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, none of them bring what Jahmyr Gibbs or even Bijan Robinson would bring to the offense. If there's a guy that could fall to day 3 that brings that electricity, I'm not as big on him as a runner, but it's that Devin Achane from Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
He runs that 4.3 speed, and he's just having a home run hitter like that back there with Justin Fields, who is also that fast. You're going to make defensive ends have to think really quickly how to play those mesh points.
You're absolutely right. What you want on the field, along with Justin Fields, are other players who are going to demand the attention of the defense so that they're not just focused on Justin Fields. Putting a spy on Justin Fields would be way too dangerous, way too costly if you've got guys like a Devon, like a Jahmyr, like some of these other, I fell in love with Tajay Spears down at the Senior Bowl. His ability to, he's got this beautiful spin move after making a catch or getting, into trouble with defensive tacklers. Those kinds of guys who just make explosive plays, you want those guys on the field along with Justin. And I really love the fact that DJ Moore is now a part of this team. He's a super high, reliable pass catcher, and he's going to demand the attention of the defense. I think Cole Kmet this is his contract year. I think he's set to improve his play. That's another area that I wouldn't mind. I know we picked up Robert Tonyan, but I wouldn't mind seeing, this is a deep class for tight ends. I wouldn't mind seeing another tight end added to this roster. Well, number one, as insurance in case you can't re-sign Cole. So you've got somebody who has learned the offense in his rookie season. You won't get as many snaps, of course, as Tonyan and Kmet, but somebody who gets acclimated to the Bears offense and the culture and gets some playing time. And there's some really good ones. One guy that I fell in love with, and it almost goes against my way of thinking because I want more speed in this draft, but I really fell in love with Payne Durham down at the Senior Bowl from Purdue. Number one, because he's a great wide tight end. He could essentially be your third offensive tackle in this offensive line. And, we know from past experience that those tackles need a lot of help. Even if we get a rookie right tackle, he's going to need help in his rookie year. But he also, Payne Durham, demonstrated really soft hands. You throw a ball to him, he's highly unlikely to drop it. And so he can get open. He's a big, wide target. And so he serves both purposes, the pass blocking, run blocking, and also going out there and catching some key passes to move the chains. So the Bears are set up for some really cool stuff, man. I can't wait.
I love that. When I watched the Senior Bowl, so Payne Durham, I loved what I saw from him too, but he kind of went under the radar for me. I kind of fell in love with Luke Musgrave, but he doesn't fit the bill that you just said. He's more of a Greg Olsen type, strictly a receiver, but he was just so good at the Senior Bowl that I was like, this guy can be one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the league. I like your thought process a little bit better there. You can probably get Payne Durham a little bit later. He's a guy who could be a blocker as well. And I love taking advantage of the depth at each position. This is a year where you got to look at what positions are really deep in the draft, and that's running back, corner, defensive line, tight end. All those positions, you can, in the 4th or 5th round, you can get a guy who in most years is going to be a day 2 pick. So being able to add a tight end like that late, I'd love to see him add. I'm just so excited too. Like you said, there's just so many possibilities. Like he can take a running back, he can take a tight end, he can take a corner, he can go strictly in the trenches. He can surprise us all and take JSN, a receiver. It's so exciting, man. Do you have a guy that isn't talked about a lot that you would like to see him take?
Here's a possibility. How about if you trade really low into the first round so that you can accumulate a lot of day 2 prospects and maybe even pick up a first rounder for next year. And now we've got 3 first rounders next year. In that case, you are targeting Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle, and he could be a plug and play offensive tackle. I don't think he's quite as good as Paris Johnson or Jones, and probably not as good as Darnell Wright, but he can definitely be a starter right away. And then you've got the accumulation of draft picks to go with that. That could be good. The one other thing that I think it's important for all of us fans to remember is that Ryan Poles said we can't fix this roster just year alone. And so accumulating picks for next year is also an important part of this. So I hope that fans pause before they start complaining and look at what do we
They
have
won't
for
do that.
next year. This is a methodical rebuilding campaign by Ryan Poles, and we have to appreciate that. We have to appreciate the patience. Ryan Pace's downfall was that he was always putting band-aids on things, and plus,
He didn't
he missed
value
out.
draft picks or the future. Yeah.
Oh my
He would
gosh,
trade
it's
them away. Just
unbelievable.
give them away. Just give them away.
Exactly.
And that's something that I think is an organizational philosophy is going to
Mhm.
change a lot of fans thinking. I think it's going to take a couple years because it doesn't happen overnight. They don't get it yet. But he's going to build through the draft and he's going to value draft picks. I think he will make a trade up at some point, but I think he's going to trade down a lot more than he trades up. And then that gives you the capital where you can afford to give up a couple picks to move up for a guy you like. And that's one thing that Ryan Pace never did. He would just throw all his picks and then he would say, and now I'm going to trade some more picks for a veteran. Think about the year we didn't have a first or a second round pick and our first pick is in the third round. He still trades up for David Montgomery. Like,
Right.
money might have fell to us, but he's like, no, you know what? I don't have a first. I don't have a second because I traded all those and we only have a couple picks, but I'm going to trade up again because I want this guy. And it just, that's an organizational philosophy that Ryan Poles does not have. He's a guy who values the future. He's doing this the right way. And that's one thing that I wish fans would understand more when they're always like, oh, everyone's just too high on Poles. You give him too much credit. I just believe he's doing things the right way, and it's refreshing to see. I love going into a draft knowing that we have extra picks, and we could come out with even more. That's exciting to me.
Yeah, I think, again, getting back to past general managers, I was always frustrated by the fact that it seemed like GMs were trying to play both sides of the street, which is build for tomorrow, but also try to win now. And that's a really, really tough task. You got to get really, really lucky. And I just detested the way Phil Emery and his successor, Ryan Pace, that they took about building the team. It's like you don't have a plan, you don't have a vision. You're just filling the roster with guys who you think are good players, but there's no plan. And so now Poles clearly has a plan, and he's inherited a guy who could be a superstar quarterback. So that's a jump that he has in his process. But let's not rush the guy. What we want to walk away with is sustainable success, playoff teams year after year, and then those playoff teams taking it deep into the playoffs and maybe even win some Super Bowls for us, because we are desperately deserving of Super Bowl wins.
We are, and that's one thing where a year from now we could be in a much better position. If you look at some teams like the Seahawks and Eagles this year, even the Lions, they were teams that they acquired an extra first-round pick in the future because they've traded away either a quarterback or they made a move in the draft, is what the Eagles did. And then you have a great season, and you go into the next offseason with hype and expectations and 2 first-round picks. And that's something we could potentially have going into next season, that it's just so exciting. We haven't had anything like that in the future. I mean, you nailed it on the head with our past 2 GMs. Emery, that one struck a chord for me a little bit when you said his name. The only GM in my lifetime, I mean, Jerry Angelo wasn't awful. I thought
No.
Jerry Angelo did some things right. He would trade down, missed his picks high in the draft, which, like you said, you have to hit those high picks, or even if you do other things well, it can still be your downfall because those first round picks are so important. And I saw a stat on Twitter, someone today, we've had 8 picks in the top 150 in the last 4 years. We
Saw that, yeah.
I think we have 9 this year, so
Yeah.
or 8 this year, same amount. But it's like that's just crazy to think about. You think about the entire last 4 years. It's not just first and second round picks. That's top 150. That's 3.5, 4 rounds deep into the draft, almost 5 rounds. You're not picking there? Like, that's wild. You got to have picks in those positions to build talent. And that way when guys leave or guys get hurt or you have bust, you got to have backup and depth on the roster.
What position do you think is in most need of depth right now?
I'd say defensive line. Definitely defensive line is where the depth is needed. I would say the starter is obviously needed at right tackle. And then I want a young guy who can project to be a starter at center. But currently we kind of have depth there because we have Cody Whitehair, and we have Lucas Patrick, we have Doug Kramer, we have Dieter Iceland. So to me, it's defensive line. That's the position that there's not a lot of depth. And then I actually like our depth at corner. You have Jalen Jones, you have Michael Ojemudia, you have some guys who aren't starters, and that's counting Kendall Vildor as a starter. If he adds another high-end player at cornerback in the second, third, or even first round, then I think our corner depth is great as well. So to me, it's defensive line. We got a couple guys there right now, but those guys could be our depth pieces. We kind of need starters as well, so you kind of just need more talent on that defensive line, at least 2 or 3 players.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, with the defensive line, that's the most worrisome position for me with the current state of the Chicago Bears leading into this draft. Yet, I still want to concentrate on getting some offensive line help for Justin, because I believe that this is the season we want to see Justin take a huge leap forward. And so that means we've got to create a comfortable pocket for him. We've got to create an offensive line that can push defenders downfield for the running game to loosen up defenses and all of those things. I mean, acquiring DJ Moore is huge, and now let's acquire a right tackle, some help in the offensive line. But in terms of performance, right now, we really need a star defensive lineman who can disrupt the pocket, who can rush from the outside, who can do all those things. My concern is that this draft might not be the one where we'll find one unless some of these guys like Felix Anuduki or some of these other second-round caliber defensive linemen end up transforming themselves into elite pass rushers. And that's definitely doable. There are some guys, one of the guys that I think a lot of people are falling in love with now as they've had time to take a look at tape is Yaya Diaby, who is going to be probably an early day 3 pick. This guy, I got a chance to interview him down at the Senior Bowl. You talk about a physical specimen. Holy cow. And when I spoke with him, he was really endearing, and he talked about how much he wants to be great in the NFL to help his mom, because his mom has sacrificed so much for him and his brothers and sisters. That's the kind of player you want in the locker room. And when you look at the tape, he's got these tendencies, a quick jump off the defensive line, the strength. He still needs to work on some pass rush moves and stuff, but he's a guy that, if he's drafted early day 3, could potentially be that elite pass rusher by year 2 or year 3. So again, another exciting aspect.
Yeah, you just gotta love a guy like that. And then also, I mean, you mentioned it, early day 3, that's another really key factor in this draft. Is a lot of people don't follow the draft really closely, don't know it, but draft pundits all know the first pick in round 4, that's a very valuable pick, because you go home after day 2 and everything on the board has changed. No matter what anyone thought, every single one of those GMs are going to go home, and the board is going to look a little bit different than they thought it was going to going into the draft. And they're going to see players on the board that shouldn't be there. And we have that first pick at the top of the 4th round. That's that point where Ryan Poles, if he wants to trade down, there's going to be teams wanting to come up to get a guy there, or he's going to be able to take a guy that, like you said, like a Yaya Diaby or somebody who's just too talented to be there on day 3, and you're like, I'm pretty much getting a day 2 guy here. So you have options there. He can trade down. We have another pick later in the 4th round too, so it's going to be a great day. Day 3 is going to be crazy. I'm too excited for this draft, and talking about it with my man Aldo here, just getting me more excited.
I'm telling you, man, I'm psyched about it. And again, I just have to promote your work, because that's the place to go to for instant analysis, for creative analysis and stuff. The Swift Sports Network is outstanding. I really applaud how quickly you guys have ascended, and that's because of your talents, brother.
I appreciate that, man. None but love. I love everything you guys do over there at the bar room. I'm hoping you guys have a show on next Thursday so I can send my viewers over after this show.
Yeah, in fact, we will be covering every round of the draft. We'll be live on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. John Buffone will be our main anchor for first round, along with Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski. On Friday for those 2 rounds, I'll anchor that with Danny Shimon and Nomad.
3, I like that. Okay.
Exactly. So we're going to cover it. Fans and analysts and everybody's invited to the bar room. BYOB, although unfortunately.
He's not supplying beer for everybody, okay, guys?
I'm sorry, I can't. I wish I could, though.
If he could, he would.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love it, Aldo. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just think that this draft, I'm worried about fan reaction, and I don't mean to be, the old guy telling people this is how you should behave and stuff. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I really do hope that people can appreciate the plan, and we can't make really solid judgments on this draft really for another year or 2. Yeah, you can match it up with what your thoughts are and your evaluation process and who you think would be in this team and so forth. But we've got to trust Poles that he is making the right decision based on the paradigm that he has for how to build this team. He is going to bypass some really good players because they may not be scheme fits. So if they bypass the big offensive tackle from Ohio State who weighs 370 pounds, well, that's because he weighs 370 pounds and they're afraid that he's not going to have the quickness to play the outside run zone scheme that this offense has. Same thing with other position players. So that's why looking at what Swift is doing and what we do at the bar room is important, because we get a better understanding of what these guys are trying to do over at Halisar. We can debate it. We're not all going to agree, but we can debate it and be better informed moving forward. So thank you very much, Swifty, for allowing me an opportunity to talk to you for 30 minutes.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I nothing but love for the show over there. And you brought up a good point with fans are always going to overreact a little bit. And one of the things is they don't see something. You mentioned it with the Yaya Diaby interview, is the person behind the player. And on top of the fact that no matter how much we think we know about the draft or how many highlights or tape we watched on a player, Ryan Poles has watched more. His scouts have watched even more than that, and they've put in more work, and then they put in way more work getting to know the player. And they want certain guys that fit that locker room, fit that culture, love football, and then want to be in Chicago. So just because a guy isn't drafted or signed, they might not fit that, and that's okay. I love what Poles is doing, and honestly, man, you killed it. I loved everything you said there, but you get the process. You got to trust the process, and for the first time in my life, I feel like we have a GM who understands that process, and that's why I say such nice things about the guy, because I just love what he's doing. I love what he's accomplished. Bringing in DJ Moore, that I couldn't even imagine that one. I had the Panthers predicted the whole time, but not once did I think they were going to give us DJ Moore. I was like, no. So it's just crazy, man. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Can't wait for the draft day. And again, thank you very much for having me on, brother.
Aldo in the house. Bear down, brother.
All right, man.
What's up, guys? Swift here. I got Haize from Chicago Bears Central joining me to talk NFL draft today. Haize, go ahead and tell them where they can find you guys on YouTube or wherever else platform you guys use.
Yeah, you can follow us at Chicago Bears Central. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Shy Bears Central on both those platforms.
Heck yeah, man. They do great work over there. Probably one of the best Chicago Bears coverage you can see out there. I watch their videos all the time. Good stuff over there.
Appreciate that.
All right. I know one of the things in this draft when it comes to the all fans and me and yourself included really want to see is the trenches on both sides of the ball shored up. I know you wanted to talk about that a little bit, so go ahead and take it away, Haize.
Yeah, I think when you look at this draft, and it's going to be interesting to see what Ryan Poles goes with first. Is he going to address the offensive line or defensive line first? But further in the later rounds, in rounds 2, 3, you can still find some really quality starting, offensive and defensive linemen that can be day one starters for you. And I think, because of that, it's going to, Ryan Poles is going to walk away from this draft with a lot of starters in needed areas. And so I think, that's what I'm really excited for. I think both of those areas are important for Bears. And I think sometimes yes, the offensive line is important for Justin Fields and to protect him. That needs to be a huge priority. but also getting Justin Fields better field position, right? So the offense is starting on the other side of the 50 more times than what they did last season. So I think when you kind of look at just the talent level of this draft, and I know a lot of Bears fans, when they hear the Bears moving back down from number 19 to 17 potentially, they're like, hey, are you giving up too much talent? But I really look at some of the players in this draft and think, hey, even if you move down to 17 and you do get your number 32 pick back, you can still walk away with 2 starters at both those picks. So that's kind of what I'm looking to see. Not necessarily saying I want the Bears to trade back again, because if Jalen Carter's there at number 9, I think you take him and you figure everything else out, in my opinion.
I'm 100% with that, man. I think those are my 2 things I've talked about, my 2 favorite scenarios that this draft plays out is Jalen Carter. If he's there, you got to take him. He's that dude. But if he's not, I'm 100% with a trade down. There's a lot of depth in this draft, and there's a lot of players. It's really deep. You can get guys in the 2nd round and the 3rd round, so I'm all about acquiring more picks.
Yeah, and Ryan Poles did that as well. Like he came into the draft, he walked out with 3 more draft picks than what he came in with, and he didn't even have a 1st round pick in that draft. And heck, we did pretty good. So that seems to be kind of Ryan Poles' mindset. If he trusts the talent that's later in that draft, he's going to trade for it and go get it. He's going to be aggressive about it.
I love that, man, and I love having a GM that values picks and wants more picks and isn't just, like Ryan Pace was, throwing a bunch of picks away to go up and get an Anthony Miller or a Mitch Trubisky. That makes it even worse. Like, if you're trading up and you hit on a guy, that's one thing. But if you trade up and miss, it just sets your team back so far. I'd always prefer a trade down, and then you get more chances at it.
Yeah, agree with that 100%. And that's what Ryan Poles has showed so far. He's done a really, I really like, look at it. We got Jack Sanborn, who's going to be a day 1 starter for us starting next season. As an undrafted rookie, he led the league in tackles in the time he was starting. It's crazy, man.
It is, man. He came in and replaced Roquan so well, and being able to find a guy like that in the undrafted free agency shows you how good of a scout Ryan Poles is. And I love him and Ian Cunningham both being in the room and having a chance to add 10 players this draft. If we don't trade down, we got 10 picks. We could end up with more.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a lot of favorite prospects in this draft. There's just a ton of guys, man. Are there any guys in there you want to talk about?
Yes, I mean, of course, the guys at the top, the Jalen Carters, the Paris Johnsons, the Broderick Jones, I'm really high on those guys, but I kind of want to focus on the guys that maybe haven't been talked about enough, because I look at a guy like Keon White out of Georgia Tech, and I'm saying if you get him, regardless of whatever you do in the 1st round, if you get him at round 2, you got a guy who's going to be able to probably come in, start for you, earn that position, but he brings that size and athleticism that he could be a dog and a great starter for you for 5, 6 plus years. And so I look at a guy like him and think, hey, that's not only just quality talent, but that's still high level talent that you can get in the 2nd round.
Oh yeah, Keon White is a beast. I watched him closely at the Senior Bowl. He was a guy, he played defensive end, but I would really like to see if we got him, move him to the 3 tech and let him be that guy who just wrecks havoc in the interior. He fits the mold. He has the long arms, good size. I think he's 6'3", 285, somewhere around there. It's just off the top of my head. But that guy's a beast. He's one of my favorite players in draft, and I think you're the first guy that's really brought him up. He's a stud, though. I love him.
Yeah, and you just look at how he's going to fit in that system, and Ryan Poles loves scheme fit, and I love what you said, move him to the 3 tech, because, I think if you do that, you're going to be able to take advantage of his size. That combination of size and speed he still has, he could be a monster at the next level. So,
yeah, I love that guy, man. Great one. Do you have any other guys there as well?
Another one that I have that I've been looking at heavily. Now, this will be way later in the draft, but Javon Dexter out of Florida, defensive tackle, has some of the issues. He's not the perfect prospect, but I look at him as some guy you could bring into your system, and that may not be a day 1 starter, but I guarantee you that he's probably going to work himself, and he has that work ethic that you can definitely see him maximizing his potential in this game and eventually being a starter, at least a really solid rotational piece that still plays a lot of snaps for you as well.
Man, I love it. You nailed another guy that I really love. I actually heard Greg Gabriel recently say that he didn't think Gervin Dexter could play the 3 tech, and I see something different. Like, he's a guy who's explosive, he's powerful, he has great size, and then when you look at his combine and athleticism scores, he was one of the top 3 defensive linemen in the entire draft when it comes to the athleticism score. So when you have a guy that's that big but that athletic, I think he can play the 3 tech. He could play the nose. He could even play left end sometimes, kind of like Justin Jones did last year.
That's a great point.
And he's a guy I would love to have. If we get him in the 3rd round, I'd be super happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get him in the 3rd round, that's something you got to look at and say, not only did Ryan Poles do it again, but like it's like a 3rd or 4th. I don't even care. Like, just draft him. Of course, not 1st or 2nd, but if he's there for you when you draft a 3rd, I'm not. If he reached on him a little bit, what we got the 64th pick as well.
Yep.
Even if he kind of reached on him there, depending on what else he did, I wouldn't hate that either. So.
I think he's a guy who, when we have those 3 picks there, I think Gervin Dexter's definitely a possibility depending on how the board falls. There's just such a mix-up. Like, when you go from like 25 to about 70 in this draft, there's just a big mush of players. And I think he's definitely in that range where he could get picked in that range for sure.
Definitely. And then another one, I want to bring up an offensive lineman here, and this guy could be further down in the draft, probably day 2, day 3. Ricky Stromberg. And I know there's been, some questions around him and his motor, but again, you're taking a shot on him so far down that draft that I think you can still get some talent out of him. And he has still some potential. He does have room for growth. He needs to add some size and stuff like that. But at that point in the draft where we get him at, I wouldn't hate it at all.
Yeah, he's kind of the product of how deep this center class is. I think in a normal year, he's probably a 2nd or 3rd round pick. But this center class, when you got JMS and Whippler and Tippmann and all the Avila and all these guys up there, Ricky Stromberg's going under the radar. And if he's a guy who's there in the 4th or 5th round, I think he's a guy who could be your center for, 5 to 10 years. So that's a guy I really like who doesn't get talked about enough. He's a leader. He's smart. He's strong. He's athletic. He's made those calls for Arkansas in the SEC and held up against Jalen Carter's and these big defensive tackles. So he's a guy I really like, man. That's a really good one right there.
And I think when you look at Cody Whitehair potentially being our starting center for this year, that gives him a year of learning behind Whitehair, really adapting to the system. But I wouldn't be surprised if, knock on wood, any injuries or anything, that if we do get Stromberg, that he ends up being our starter by the end of the season. So.
Oh yeah, I think he's a guy. If we drafted him by the end of the year, he should be the starter. I mean, Lucas Patrick or Cody Whitehair could hold down the job for a little bit if you don't want to give it to a rookie, but he's not like a Doug Kramer who he's going to come in and be undersized and get pushed around. He's going to come in and be an upgrade over what we saw from Mustipher last year, day 1. Sure. So I'd love to see that, man.
For sure. Can I ask you about a prospect?
Oh, yeah, any of them, man. Yeah.
Mozzie Smith. How do you feel about Mozzie Smith?
I love him. So he was Bruce Feldman does this thing. It's called the Freaks of College. He does it every year. He makes this Freaks list, and he has the 100 most athletically freakish players in college. And last year we drafted a bunch of guys off that list. Kyler Gordon, Brisker, Braxton Jones, Dominique Robinson were all on his Freaks list. And the number 1 guy on his Freaks list this year, number 1 out of all 100, is Mozzie Smith. Wow. And when you see him, a lot of people are like, he's too big. Like, the Bears won't draft a guy. He's 337. But he didn't run a 40, so he doesn't have an RAS score. But when you realize he would have had an RAS score of 9.5 or higher and that he could play anywhere on the defensive line, I think he's a guy Ryan Poles could love. He's not talked about enough, again, because you have the Jalen Carters and the Kalijah Kanseys and all these other guys, but he was awesome on Michigan's defensive line. He had big games in the Big Ten, in the playoffs as well. Like, he's a guy I love, and he's athletic freak. I mean,
yeah, he's the kind of player that, to me, that sometimes I think like GMs or these guys who do mock drafts, they talk themselves out of, and it's like, just look at how he plays. Like, he's just a beast. Like, he just gets it done. And so that's what I'm looking at for him. I really do think he's going to come in and just again, another player that's going to put in the work. He's going to maximize on his potential, and I think he's going to eliminate any type of questions around him very early, and he's going to make quarterbacks feel his presence too. So
yeah, I think and those are the kind of guys I like. They stand out on tape. When you watch Michigan, if you're watching that defensive line at all, you're going to notice Mozzie Smith. He's bigger than Jalen Carter, but moves quicker or as quick as Jalen Carter. Takes on double teams. He's just a monster. I love that guy.
That's it, man. That's kind of the prospects I'm looking at. I wanted to go some that were kind of not talked about as much for Bears. I feel like everybody's focusing on Jalen Carter falling when it's like, hey, man, there's still so much talent here on that defensive line that we can go out and get. And I trust Ryan. This is probably the first time I've been a Bears fan my whole entire life.
Same.
Born and raised, haven't been a fan of another team. And it's like this is the first time where I'm really just I have a lot of faith and excitement around the game plan and things that Ryan Poles has. And we'll see. He's not blind faith yet. Like if he nails this draft, will probably become that.
Yep.
But it's just like I just love the way he goes about his business. I won't lie. Love it.
I feel the exact same way, man. I've been looking for that my whole life. When I was younger, Jerry Angelo was a guy. I liked a lot of what Jerry Angelo did. He would hit on late round picks, occasionally get some good free agents. He drafted Tillman and Briggs and a lot of good players, but couldn't get the quarterback right. He had Kyle Orton and Rex Grossman, and then he's gone. And since then, it's just been an absolute disaster of GMs. And now we finally, first time in probably my whole life, we have a GM that I'm just completely comfortable with what he does, with what he's doing, and how he evaluates players, how he looks at the roster, the way he speaks. He's upfront, he's honest, he's confident. He likes the same type of players that I think me and you do, like these freakishly, because Tremaine Edmonds is that kind of guy. He was that kind of guy in the draft a few years back. I liked him a lot more than Roquan because he was the athletic freak of the draft. And now he signs a guy like that, trades Roquan away, and it's like, man, then he gets DJ Moore. Right now, I mean, people want to say it's being a homer or whatever when you give Ryan Poles love. It's like after 1 year on the job, I think it's weird to criticize a GM, but I think it's what you should do is give him the benefit of the doubt. But when he's stacking wins like this, you got to step back and enjoy it and be confident, and that's a good feeling to have. But like you said, this draft is really important. So
yeah, I mean, what he does in this draft, and I mean, already when you look at him getting a first and a second for trading the first overall pick, we could be right back talking about the same thing next year. Because I look at that Carolina team and I'm like, Ryan Poles, you may have did it again because I don't think that team's going to win a lot of games. And we'll see what else changes with what they do in the draft and everything. But I think we're still going to be talking about potentially having another top 15 pick from Carolina on top of our own pick. And then what does Ryan Poles do then? Like, I just love the way he goes about his business. I love the vision he has. I like how he plans not only for now, but the future. And for so long as Bears fans, it seemed like we were prisoners of the moment, right? We were always kind of the reactionary franchise. We had some talent. We did good in some drafts. We got some talent late in drafts, like you said, but we never really felt like we were building something that was, pieces of the puzzle bit by bit. And it really feels like that's what Ryan Poles is doing with this franchise.
Dead on, man. He sees the whole picture and he seems like he's a guy that gets it. And I love that, man. I couldn't be happier about it.
For sure.
Dead on. Well, hey, man, Haize, it was awesome having you, man. I love what the work you guys are doing over there. Keep it up. Anytime you want to work with me, man, reach out. We can do something again. And then one last time, go ahead and tell people where they can find you. Say any final words you want to say.
Definitely. You can follow me if you want to follow me personally at CEO Haize. That's Haize. But more importantly, follow Chicago Bull Central and Chicago Bears Central. Those are both two channels that I manage. And I appreciate it, man. I thank you for having me, Swift.
Yeah, and great point, man. Hey, Bulls have a big off season coming up too. They could have a lot of changes coming. This is the man for Bulls coverage as well. Awesome.
Yeah,
well,
man.
Appreciate having you, my man.
Thank you, Swift.
What's up, guys? I got my man Ville here from the 3 Point Stands pod going over the NFL draft today. What's up, Ville? Go ahead and introduce yourself. Say what's up to the people.
What's good? My name is Ville from 3 Point Stands pod. First and foremost, let me say thank you, and that I'm honored to be on with Swift, who hit me up to be a part of this major project that a lot of us are amped about. This historic draft that's about to go down for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears. What we like to do at 3 Point Stands pod is discuss rumors, breaking news, signings, and all the dramas that come with it. We like that meme from the movie Blades of Glory where Will Ferrell says, it's provocative. Get the people going. You feel me? Get the people going. So with that being said, my name is Ville. You can find me at 3 Point Stands pod on Twitter and 3 Point Stands pod on YouTube, where we don't claim to be experts. We just give our takes, take it or leave it. We'll be fine either way.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So the first thing we wanted to talk about today is there are some rumors floating around about a trade down with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know you want to talk about that a little bit and then maybe even give me a sleeper that could come in and offer a trade. Go ahead and take it away.
For sure. A couple of days ago, we heard via Twitter, media, ESPN, that Pittsburgh was thinking about offering us a trade-up package package was rumored to be the 17th pick that they have in the first round and the 49th pick of the second round, which is kind of in the area that we already starting in the second round. I'm not feeling that 49th pick. I don't know about you. What do you think?
I mean, I feel it. My guy Stacks told me the same thing. I had a conversation with him about it the other day. He really wants that 32 pick. I feel it. I think possibly if we get that 32, we might have to give up one of our picks. But I do want that pick 32.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of want that pick back only because how many fans are already crapping on Ryan Poles because we had to give it up. We didn't know it was going to be the 32nd pick. We didn't know it was going to be that close to the first round, but it is there. And if they want something and he can get that, that would be most fire trades I've been a part of, where you've given up something and pretty much got it back and you got what you had before. I believe Claypool is going to break out anyway, so it's going to be worth it regardless. But I think the 32nd pick will make it much sweeter. But that 32nd pick is what'll seal it for me, in my opinion.
I love it, man. I would love to have a pickup in that range. It's just there's a lot of talented players that could fall out of the first round and give us a chance to go up there and really attack a need with a special player. And then you had another team you think might be interested in trading up as well, right?
For sure, for sure. All right, y'all, hang in there with me. Swift and I discussed this a little bit earlier, and he was like, interesting. So my idea is, there have been rumors that the Patriots are thinking about shipping Mac Jones off and possibly trading up to get maybe a Will Levis, Richardson, someone of that nature that may fall. So I'm thinking, what if it's not a trade up for a quarterback? What if Bill Belichick sees Tyree Wilson, Luke Van Ness, Jalen Carter even? You know, it's been rumored that he might slip and fall. And obviously us Bears fans, we want Jalen Carter. We wanted him before all the news broke. And at 1, we wouldn't have wanted the trade back if he was available and that news didn't come out. We would have been fine picking him at 1. So at 9, he would be even better. With that being said, if Jalen Carter is available, there's going to be a lot of phones ringing, I think. So with the Patriots maybe seeing that and having to weigh Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson, or Luke Van Ness, or one of these quarterbacks that may miss, because I think Levis may fall even further than 15. I believe they might be privy to call us or have Poles call them and say, hey, can you offer us something, maybe the 14th pick and the 46th pick? So I think Bill Belichick is a great coach that can take Carter in. He can take the knock on the chin with his legacy if he busts, which I doubt he'll bust.
With Belichick, I mean, he's a guy who has that draft history. He's won so many Super Bowls. He can afford to take a risk like that. This will be Ryan Poles' first round pick he's ever made. So it is a little, he doesn't have the luxury of having the draft history and the success and the winning to take the risk that a guy like Bill Belichick could, man. I love that point. And then I also wanted to touch on your point on getting that Claypool trade back too. If he managed to get that Claypool pick back, and then he got DJ Moore from trading down. So let's say you trade down twice and you get DJ Moore, some extra picks, and then you get your Chase Claypool pick back and some extra picks. You basically got DJ Moore and Chase Claypool for free. That'd be crazy, man. Like free 99. Right. Like that's just insane. That'd be a dream scenario for me.
Like LeBron James do. Crown that man. Crown that man.
Crown is that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next up, we're going to touch on the trenches. I believe, let's go ahead and talk about the position that I think you want to touch on most. I believe is the center position. That spot where Sam Mustipher was the guy last year, but there's a lot of talent in this year's draft at the center position, and we have a lot of picks. So you think we should definitely bring in a center, right?
Yeah, I know I hear a lot of Bears fans, and I agree with you. First and foremost, before it gets crazy in the comments, I know we're not live, but eventually we're gonna have to upload this and see the comments. I want the right tackle solidified, trust and believe. But I've watched so many reruns of games and film showing Sam Mustipher getting tossed to the side, showing him running like he's in a glitch on a video game on Madden and blocking air spinning in circles, facing the wrong way. And I know y'all can feel me. Swift is over there laughing. He's seen it, and we've commented on it watching games. And I've sent him DMs like, "What is this dude doing?" And showing him the videos, and then seeing the inside of the pocket collapse so much into Fields' lap, and him having to do that spin out every time. It's more of the interior being pushed back, where your left guard and your center have not taken their anchors properly, and they've gotten pushed back into his lap. So I would like to see a center of the future, somebody that can intelligently diagnose defenses pre-snap and help get the line together, help at the new right tackle, whoever we get at right tackle. So I'm not saying that it's more important than right tackle, but I feel like that's where a lot of the pressure came in, was from the interior side. And bringing Lucas Patrick back again, I don't see that helping. I see that as a Band-Aid. I see Whitehair coming in. I see that as another Band-Aid, both aging vets, both with their own flaws. To me, Lucas Patrick is lighting that. I don't know if I can say that, lighting the tail, I say. Whitehair has his issues with snaps. So I need a young guy. If we're going to have people making mistakes, get a young guy in there that can grow with Fields, that can communicate with Fields, that comes from maybe the same program, like a Luke Whippler from Ohio State, 6'3", 300 pounds, intelligent guy, or a Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. It could be around the second round, mid to late second round, where we go that route. He's 6'3", 313, a little bit bigger than Whippler, so I wouldn't mind that too. Those are two programs that put out guys left and right. Every year there's somebody great coming out of those two programs. And then if we wait a little bit later, maybe get a developmental center, maybe a Juice Scruggs out of Penn State in maybe the fourth or fifth round, but get somebody for competition for that interior.
Definitely got to fix that position. It was a problem last year, and you can't avoid that. When the pressure's coming right at your face, it's almost impossible to just overcome that. You have to be able to stop that pressure. And then if the tackle gets beat, and he can try to escape and get away. But you got to shore up that inside. So that's one reason I'm really happy. We got Nate Davis. We got Tevin Jenkins. Now we just need a center to go in there as well. And there's a lot of guys. One guy I wanted to mention was Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas. He's athletic, from another good program that produces good offensive linemen, like you said, similar to Wisconsin. Some good guys have came out of Arkansas, and he fits Ryan Poles' profile in a lot of ways, and he's a guy who can come in. Justin Fields needs someone in front of him who can be smart, like you said, diagnose the defenses, make the calls on the line, and really help grow with Justin Fields over the next decade. But then after that, we did want to touch on that right tackle spot, though, because like you said, we still do need a right tackle. So what are your thoughts of the right tackle position?
Okay, obviously everybody's fan favorite, Paris Johnson, Ohio State, 6'6", 313 pounds, 36-inch arms, athletic, with quick feet. Some call him happy feet, say he needs to work on that. But I would say if that's all you have to work on, you pretty much got you a solid right tackle for years to come. He can grow with Justin Fields too. He also has already been interviewed and said one of the three teams that he wants to play for is the Chicago Bears. You don't hear that very much with our weather. That's a perfect number one option. I would go for him and be happy at 9. I wouldn't bat an eye if we grabbed him at 9. My other one, if we trade back, I've heard some possibilities that he might go 9, but those are the type of things that happen when you get closer to the draft. People just suddenly take a super leap. I don't believe it's great value at 9, but Darnell Wright has played right tackle all last year, 13 games. As Swift mentioned earlier, and I'll let him expand on Wright a little bit more, the man is an athletic beast.
Most athletic tackle in the draft, and he's a guy who's 330 pounds, like you said, so being that athletic at that size is really special. He has the arm length. He dominated Will Anderson in the SEC, familiar with Luke Getsy from their time together at the Senior Bowl. So Darnell Wright's a guy that I think would be a perfect fit. He's also played right tackle, so he can come in and play right tackle day one. You don't have to worry about him getting adjusted to the position or anything. And he's one of my favorites in the class. And 9 is probably a little too rich for him, but if nobody offers you any good trades and you like Darnell Wright more than Paris Johnson, I don't see why you don't pull the trigger. I wouldn't judge Ryan Poles for, but I think it's probably less likely at this point. If we get Darnell Wright, it's more likely a trade down.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I know my man over here, Ville, is also, like me, a fan of my guy, Khalil Herbert, who is a hard worker, has a lot of burst, was a little overshadowed, lived in under David Montgomery's shadow, but outproduced him every chance he had last year. He's also working out with Justin Fields down in Florida. So, I mean, he's clearly wants to get his hands better. And that's his biggest weakness. Well, catching passes and then pass blocking. Those are his two biggest weaknesses. So he clearly is aware of that and is trying to get better. But what are your thoughts on Khalil Herbert and the running back position?
So last year, well, around the same time that, we seen the video of Darnell Mooney with the jugs machine, I believe, after the New York Giants game, Herbert was interviewed or had a quote that he wanted to get one and wanted to work on his hands and be a more complete back, 3-down back, or at least work on his receiving, which would be awesome because as of right now, I'm getting faster Jordan Howard vibes from him, which was great. He was a solid back, but I'd like to see more in the passing game from him. Love his explosion, love his ability to break tackles, and once he's out in the open, he's pretty much gone. So he's not a burner. He's not a 4.3 40 guy or anything like that. But once he's out there, you've seen about a 30-40 yard screen against the Patriots, but he took off. Once he gets it in his hands, he's gone in open field. So I love the kid, but I do believe that we need to add a 1-2 punch element to him for the future. Obviously, we picked up Foreman, who did great last year and in spots before that year with Derrick Henry. Yep. And then obviously came last year with Carolina and had over 200 carries, over 900 yards, and I believe 12 games, it was.
Yeah, he had a big year, yeah. Once Christian McCaffrey got traded, he took over that job and just ran with it. So
exactly. So I got about 2 or 3 guys, if you allow me to mention them real quick. My first guy I would love to have is Zach Charbonnet from UCLA, 6'2", 220. And Charbonnet is at a 4.5 40-yard dash. That's an excellent 1-2 punch. You can beat up the defense. We obviously ranked number 1 in rushing. A lot of that was Justin Fields. But now we can take a lot of that off of Justin Fields. My second guy for the 1-2 punch category will be Rashawn Johnson out of Texas. Everybody's talking about Bijan Robinson, taking him at 9. That's a little pricey. I wouldn't cry about it. I probably would instantly go get a jersey, to be honest.
Me too.
But I'm not really rooting for it with the way the defensive line and the offensive line looks at this point. But this will be an excellent consolation prize. Rashawn Johnson, 6'2", 222, another 4.5 40-yard dash, and you can beat some defenses down with him and Herbert. So I think that would be a good 1-2 punch. And third, I'm looking at Chase Brown. Obviously, Pose likes his Illinois college people, the people that love growing up Chicago Bears fans or actually lived in Illinois and have that vibe for. And he's 5'11", 215, so kind of closer to Herbert size, but fast. 4.43 40-yard dash. Chase Brown could come in at third down back and that pass catching back, blocking on third down, things of that nature, and can also grow with Herbert in that backfield because I don't see them retaining Foreman or even Homer after this year. So you replace one of these young guys, let them get their feel for the NFL, and then sayonara to Foreman. Thank you for your services. Thank you, Homer, for your services, and then place one of those guys in, and you got a 1-2 punch for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Love it, man. Yeah, Khalil Herbert, he's got a lot of talent on his own. I really like Khalil Herbert and what he brings to the offense. But yeah, this running back class is so deep. You said it. We can find a guy that complements Herbert's game and makes this rushing offense even better. This is a great year to do it. I'm excited about the draft and the running back class. That's something a lot of people don't talk about. Bijan's the guy, like you said, everyone wants to talk about Bijan, but you can get guys later in this draft, some guys I'll mention. There's a guy from Pitt. I don't know how to say his name. Guy from Syracuse, Sean Tucker. Kid from Auburn, Tank Bigsby. Like there's a lot of players in this draft that are just really good, really talented running backs. I love Chase Brown that you brought up as well. And then the last spot on offense is we have a killer wide receiver core right now that I'm really excited about with DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, and Darnell Mooney. But I mean, there is one wide receiver that everybody wants to talk about in this draft, and it's JSN. He's a guy who went to college with Justin Fields, has some chemistry. I know you wanted to talk about JSN a little bit. Give me your thoughts here.
It's kind of like the Bijan Robinson situation. If he was drafted, I would kind of slightly cringe, but be like, time to go get his jersey because our offense is going to be explosive. Now, obviously, everybody's going to say, boy, you an idiot because ain't nobody going to be able to block anything.
Cool in the 5th round last year, so you can't ever write him off and say he can't. I mean, that's the thing. I got until he proves that he can't, I got to give him some faith.
Absolutely. And people hear us say that, and we're not saying to wait till the 5th round again. What we're saying is he was able to find qualities in a guy in the 5th round. Obviously, he picked more afterwards, but the one that he actually spoke on, I believe it was the day after the draft, he singled out Braxton Jones. That's what people don't get. And I've shared that article on my Twitter page a ton, where he spoke about Braxton Jones immediately and said that he is the guy that they feel can take over that spot. And as of the first camp of June, he got that spot and never let it go.
Never, yep.
So obviously, that's what we mean that about how he was able to identify that prospect for the left tackle spot and then become an all rookie.
And was the only guy on our entire offense that played every snap of the whole season. Didn't miss a snap. Yep.
So that's durability, as well as letting you know that he didn't do anything to be pulled. So with that being said, we're talking about wide receivers. I believe JSN is the only prospect at wide receiver that I would want, not just at 9, but I will want for the first couple of rounds. Okay. Because you've got a guy that played with Justin Fields. He's the best route runner in the draft. Sure hands. He's a beast. Would be able to take over for one of the 2 guys that are extension worthy, Claypool or Mooney. We've seen that Ryan Poles, and I'm not bad-mouthing around Ryan Poles, he's about business. We've seen Roquan Smith go. We've seen David Montgomery go. So there's no guarantee that Mooney will still be here. We love Mooney, love what he offers, but he is coming off an injury.
I mean, that's a great point. So, I mean, he's also, people want to talk about not Poles guys. I mean, Mooney's not Poles guy. He's not a guy Poles brought in, and he's brought in a lot of wide receivers now. Every other one of the wide receivers on the team, all 5 of them, were signed or drafted or traded for by Poles. So, you said, he's let Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, David Montgomery, Roquan Smith, all these guys who a lot of fans have jerseys for, he's shipped them off to bring in guys he likes. So, yeah, there is a possibility of that on Mooney, and that's a point that's not talked about enough yet, and it is one of the reasons I think Claypool is probably more likely to get an extension, because that's a guy, Ryan Poles handpicked him to come in, and obviously if he doesn't produce at all this year, maybe that's not as likely, but I don't think there's much chance Claypool walks after this year. Not after you traded such a high pick for him. They're bringing him back.
And I don't see him flopping. I know everybody wants to get down on Poles and Claypool for how the second half of the season happened. It's very tough for wide receivers to transfer over to a new system that a quarterback is still learning the new system. And people forget the very first 4 to 6 games, we had a completely different style of play. And so coming out of that bye week, we were on another level of play. Like, the offense was putrid those first 4 to 5 games.
They weren't passing the ball at all. It was, oof.
Exactly. So then it had to have a steady increase, and we started seeing bigger plays downfield and more passing plays. And it didn't ever really get to NFL average, but this offseason allows all personnel to get together. JSN would be a treat for our eyes, for one. That would be, as Swift called it, probably one of the top, if not the top, wide receiving core in the league. And then if one of the Mooney or Claypool's walks, you got JSN right there to take that spot. I love the idea when I think about it a lot more. Obviously, I would hope that we can hit in the second round on an offensive lineman, especially after that, a center,
Yep.
so that we can actually give Fields time. Take JSN, just so I won't be long winded. If we take JSN at 9, it would suck because we would probably be passing on like a Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd get over it once I've seen JSN's first touchdown, to be honest.
Exactly, man. And that's something a lot of fans forget about is once players start going off, I mean, you forget about where they were drafted. But then you also had a couple sleepers at wide receiver that we can get later in the draft too, where we don't have to pick someone in the first round.
Absolutely. And I think that'll make fans a lot happier. And that's kind of where I'm actually going. So don't cuss me out too hard in the comments. You know, I don't need all the swearing and the emojis on Swift's thing just for him inviting me on, because, you know, he's got a great program here. So I'm not trying to sour that. So my two sleepers that I would be happier, not happier, but I would be happy with, because that means that we solidified the trenches earlier. From West Virginia, Bryce Ford Wheaton. He's a speedster. His 40-yard dash was 4.38. His jump ball game is elite. He had a 41-inch vertical. And I believe Swift put me on to his RAS score, and it was at a 9.97, right?
Yep. Off the
So
charts.
that's that
Most athletic receiver in the whole draft. Yep.
Exactly. And he's a tall dude, 6'3", I believe. He's 205, 210. If you got Wheaton, Ford Wheaton has 6'3", and Claypool, two big guys on the outside. Both of them are speedsters. Swift had to remind me earlier that Claypool ain't no punk with the speed either. So my bad for disrespecting Double C. My bad, player. I forgot you was like that with the speed at 4.32. The other guy that I like, and as soon as I said his name, Swift lit up a little bit too. Another sleeper that we can get in those later rounds, Andre Yoshivas from Princeton, 6'3", 205, 39-inch vertical, 4.4 40-yard dash, and a 9.92 relative athletic score. Another beast of an athlete. Kind of sort of reminds me of Alec Pierce-ish, since everybody cried about Alex Pierce not being selected and this, that, and the third. Not so much so, not every bit of Alec Pierce, but Alec Pierce didn't blow the locks off the door last year. So if we get a poor man's version of him, we're hoping to see some good things from Velus Jones for that wide receiver 4 position. But if he can secure that wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, again, another deep ball candidate, burner that can get out there and be a decoy, that would be a good selection, and we wouldn't have to waste a premium pick on a wide receiver.
I love that, man. Waiting to day 3 on this draft and picking a wide receiver might just be the thing to do. Like you said, we got a talented wide receiver room, but you can never have too many weapons. Might as well bring in someone else. Before we go, I know this was mostly offensive focus, but I know that you had a couple defensive prospects you wanted to throw out there as well, just to get their names out there and mention the defense as well. You want to go ahead and give me your guys on defense?
Yeah, for sure. And just so we won't belabor the time, I'll just give a few of the names and positions that I think, and I'll start with priority, and then we won't speak on safety or linebacker. I'll start with DTs, and obviously, defensive tackle Jalen Carter from Georgia. Another guy, if we decided to trade back, if he's available, because he's rising himself, Kalijah Clancy from Pitt. We can get a smaller consolation prize. He's not going to be Aaron Donald, which everybody is comparing him to, but I believe he will be a good consolation prize if we're looking for an athletic defensive tackle that can get to the quarterback, is very fast, very flashy, has a decent amount of pass rush moves from the interior. I like him at DT.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I like Cansey a lot. Some people make a big deal about his short arms, but I think he's a guy who's going to have success in the NFL.
So at edge, I'll say obviously Tyree Wilson, Texas Tech, Miles Murphy at Clemson. Tyree Wilson actually at 9, I would do in a heartbeat. Miles Murphy, I'll kind of bat an eye a little bit. I would hope we would trade back. If that's the case and he slips and you can trade back and get him in the teens, I wouldn't bat an eye. But at 9, I'm not so sure, especially if a Tyree Wilson, or even my third consolation prize, or my third player that I consider a consolation prize. I know a lot of people think he should go at 9 regardless if he's there. Luke Van Ness. He's a dog. He's a beast. It just concerned me. And I think Swift did a great job of settling my concerns down, which he always seems to do when I hit him in the DM and be like, hey, dog, what you think about this player? I think this, that, and the third. He's always good at telling me, nah, bro, you thinking too hard about it. So my thoughts were, him not being a full-time starter, him not being able to win and solidify a full-time starter spot. But as Swift has told me, he's played 60% plus snaps over his time at the position. So that's good enough to be considered a full-time starter. But Iowa obviously likes to respect their seniors. So he wasn't able to get that in his junior, sophomore, freshman years. But he's still young. He's 21, still able to be handcrafted by a defensive line coach. His bull rush is elite. My only concern is what's past that bull rush once they stop that bull rush. If somebody's able to anchor, can he add pass rush moves to it? But at his size, I wouldn't mind Luke Van Ness after Swift kind of had to bring me down to earth and say, nah, dog is a beast.
Yep. And then I think we agreed on the 3 corners, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter Jr., and Christian Gonzalez. I don't think either of those would be bad options. I don't know if I necessarily want to take a corner that high, but this is a draft with a ton of corners too. So I do want to see us take a corner at some point. Until I see the corner class is so deep that I don't care where we take a corner, and we don't have to do it in the first round. Always awesome talking to you, man. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to say before you go?
No, I just appreciate you hitting me up and allowing me to be a part of this special draft show for 2023. We've been talking about this since last year while everybody was complaining about the 2022 draft. Our minds was already on this draft, but I appreciate you, bro.
No, man, I appreciate it, man. We'll have to have you back on for sure. I might be doing something else after the draft.
Oh, yeah, real quick, I will be at the draft party. So I offered to Swift, if he wants to call me, because he's going to be going live, I'm already going to be tuning in. I'm going to be at the draft party, not the draft, because I'm not driving to Kansas City again. I already did that once this year.
Soldier Field draft party.
Right. The Soldier Field draft party. I will be there. So I offered Swift, because I'm already be looking at the show anyway, because I every time he goes live, I check in. So I will be there. If he calls me and wants me to join the show, I'll show you all around the draft party, and I'll be his correspondent for that day. And I'll definitely go live when it's time for us to be on the clock for that first pick.
Heck yeah, man. I appreciate it so much, man. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Bear down, brother.
Bear down.
What's up, guys? Swift here. I got my boy Jordan T. Silvera in the house for our NFL draft special. Jordan, tell everybody what's up. Tell them where they can find you.
Of course, Swift, as always, appreciate you having me. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Jordan T. Silvera, as you see on the little comment thing down there. Jordan T. Silvera on Twitter. Just posted my positional rankings, top 5 for most positions for everything from quarterback to punter. On Twitter, you can find me there. And if you have any questions regarding the draft class, always welcome to talk. Discourse is welcome. And Swift, thanks for having me.
Hey, punters are people too, man. I've said it all along. We got to give Trenton Gill some love. We don't need a punter this year, so I haven't scouted him. You're not getting a top 5 for me. So if you guys want your top 5 punters, you better go find Jordan out there. So we're talking about the Chicago Bears today, strictly about the NFL draft. probably the first thing I want to talk about is what you think they'll do in the first round. We'll hit on that quickly, and then we'll move on to some other topics.
Absolutely, Swift. I hate to give you the answer that feels like they can go any direction, but as you and I were just kind of talking a little bit backstage, I feel like there are very few positions that you can have a wrong answer to. Obviously, we don't think they're picking quarterback. That one wouldn't make much sense. Wide receiver, you already have invested a ton there, so maybe those ones don't make a ton of sense if you see them drafted. But to me, there are so many positions of need that you really can't go wrong here. That being said, to me, it seems like, and we can talk obviously about the depth of the class, but I think if you miss on an offensive tackle in round one, while there's some intriguing options, my issue is that particularly at your next set of picks at the end of the second, early third, there's not a lot of great options that I imagine would be there. People like Wanye Morris, their stock is rising. You're talking about people like Matt Bergeron, who I don't frankly think makes it to the end of the second. Now you're talking about, do you end up reaching for a guy like Nick Saldiveri, who I'm really fond of, but I still think that's really high. Carter Warren, that feels awfully high for a guy like him, Carter McClendon, or Warren McClendon, excuse me.
McClendon, yeah.
I mean, so to me, I think that when you're talking about that first pick for the Chicago Bears, if you don't take that offensive lineman, that right tackle, you're almost betting on another Braxton Jones level prospect that maybe works, maybe doesn't, or you're hoping to pick up another Riley Reef veteran after the draft. And that may be a little bit too risky for Poles. So I think offensive tackle makes a lot of sense. But I also think that you're talking about either edge or three tech. What's so interesting about this class is I know everybody that's watching this knows that the premier three tech is Jalen Carter. And sure, if Jalen Carter's there, I wouldn't be surprised if that's their three tech of choice. But we talk about guys like Lucas Van Ness who can play edge or play three tech. I'm probably one of the few that you'll hear me talk about Tyree Wilson in that same way. But Tyree Wilson is another guy that fits that mold of DeForest Buckner, Javon Kinlaw, Arik Armstead, so many others that Flus and others have picked from. Where what if I tell Tyree Wilson, hey, man, are you willing to add 10, 15 pounds? We'll bulk you up. And then you're just beating guards left and right because you're just too strong and too athletic, too explosive for them to handle. And we put you over a guard and you're just wrecking shop every play. So to me, I really think that it's, I guess in priority of the Bears, I would imagine it's offensive line. You got, Poles and Cunningham there. That's their specialty. They know what they want. And then you're moving down to kind of that second level, which is Flus and the rest of the coaching staff. Can we get that front seven of the defense better, which is edge or three tech help, whatever it's going to take. Let's get one of those guys.
Love it, man. Love it. And basically, I mean, when you look at it, you touched on it right. The talent in this class at edge is better in the second round and beyond. And same being said at defensive tackle and cornerback as well, which are the other positions I would consider they might take. I definitely can't rule out cornerback, but you almost have to go tackle first round unless there's someone they really like on day two, like a Wanye Morris or potentially a Blake Freeman or a
and that's hard. Like, how do I know that they're going to be there at 61 or whatever those picks are at the end of the second?
I mean, it comes down to if the tackle class isn't deep enough that you're comfortable finding a starter at right tackle on day two, then it almost forces his hand to take a tackle in the first round. And I've definitely touched on that, and I think that's a great point and something that when it comes to edge and cornerback, the other two positions that I think, hey, we really need those positions and they're premium positions for Ryan Poles. Both of those classes are so deep, he can wait on that.
1,000%. I mean, we'll play the game real quick. And I mean, that's kind of the idea behind it is, and your audience, feel free to run up a mock draft simulator, your preference of choice, and you'll see this so let's just say, for example, we've talked about you skipping that offensive line. You're talking about Jalen Duncan, Matthew Bergeron. Again, I think Cody Mauch is a guard, but I mean, maybe they get wild and they want to put him in tackle. There's not a ton. Now, if you decide to take, an offensive lineman, and now you're missing on corner or edge or three tech, at that late second, early third, again, we're not assuming any trades. They just stay put where they are. It's Zach Pickens, it's Adabare, it's
Keon White, there's
Keon White,
Carl
Brooks, Kobe Turner. Going down to edges, it's Zach Harrison and Felix Anudike Uzoma. We're talking about Dylan Horton. You've got edge talent there. Corners, you're Tyreek Stevenson, you're Julius Brents,
Riley Moss. You got a lot of guys down there.
So
man. Darius Rush.
We're just, and Darius Rush is a great one. We're talking about, we're not searching for names that are quality. And so, yeah, maybe again, maybe they're not everybody's flavor. They're not the top of the draft, but I guess in a perfect world, and I would imagine, I'm not paid to do Chicago Bears work. I know Ryan Poles is. He probably knows infinitely more than I do. But the reality there is, why would I possibly take Joey Porter, Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, and then end up having to fill a hole with Wanye Morris, Bergeron, whoever, when it could have been Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, Anton Harrison, Peter Skoronski, whoever else. And then on the back end of it, I don't end up with, a bum corner. I get Tyreek Stevenson, or I get, Julius Brents. I'd feel
Emmanuel
much better.
Forbes. Yeah, there's so many guys there, man. Keely Ringo is even going to be a second round
Yeah,
prospect now. I mean,
and then we're just talking corners. I mean,
Yeah.
if the option there too is like, okay, fine, I take Paris Johnson, and in the second round I end up with Zach Harrison, or one of these other guys at edge.
I'll name some: Andre Carter, Isaiah Foskey. You got
Yeah,
Thule,
Foskey.
you got Keon White, Derek Hall, B.J. Ojolari. There's just a ton of guys. I mean, that are
Isaiah
talented.
McGuire, which I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel about it.
I like
Nobody
Isaiah,
wants-
and then Byron Young from Tennessee. That's one of the things. Yaya Diaby. There's so
Yep.
many edges that after the top few guys, it's hard to talk about all the other guys because there's so many. Down to Andre Carter and Haba Baldonado and Nick Hampton. There's guys like just all the way down the draft, and you even get to your guy down there, B.J. Thompson. Like, they're just guys all through the draft at edge and corner. Those are the two deepest positions in the entire draft to me.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about it all the time is in draft talk and trying to fill needs with, that battle of best player available versus, team need. You're always trying to find a way to thread that needle as perfect as possible. Can I find a way to get the best player available while also matching team need? And again, it's our perspective and we're sharing our opinion here, but I would imagine you're probably going to see the Bears saying the same thing, which is it just makes sense to draft the value position that is also a team need and get the best player available at tackle in the first, and then move on to the next team need, which is edge or three tech, where there's a lot more a plethora of names that are quality players, and we're not losing out as much as opposed to reaching in the second round for some tackle that may not be our flavor, but we're trying to push a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't make sense.
That's the thing now. You mentioned it before this. He saw a tweet out there that someone's calling for Wanye Morris to be our pick in the second round now, which I think is a little bit high, but that could be a position, something that would be forced on Poles if he doesn't take a tackle in the first round. I don't think we're 100% locked into a tackle. I think there are a couple of guys he might like in the second round. I don't know who. I mean, other than I think he likes Wanye Morris, but he could like, Jalen Duncan. He could like Bergeron. He could like Freeman. But if Jalen Carter's there at 9, I think he might pull that trigger and roll with it.
I think we saw last year that Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham, they were willing to bet on themselves as former offensive linemen and go, yeah, I know. I get you guys think that we need to take a tackle in the top picks, whether it be Abraham Lucas or one of these other guys. But let me show you that I can turn water to wine with Braxton Jones in the 5th round.
I'm going to give Poles the benefit of the doubt this year again. So far, I love the moves he's doing, but this draft is deep at a lot of the positions I like. I hope we're not pigeonholed into taking a tackle in the first round, but it's one of the things I've said. If it comes down to it and he takes a tackle, you just kind of have to shake your head and say it made too much sense.
I think perspective is about everything when it comes to viewing your team. And to me, it puts at least a lot more ease on my mind, feeling like we heard Poles talk about it last year after the class that Justin Fields was our first round pick this year. And so I think in some ways, if you view it the same way that DJ Moore is your first round pick this year, and then if you're just saying that it was DJ Moore and Paris Johnson, DJ Moore and Skoronski, DJ Moore and Lucas Van Ness, DJ Moore and Jalen Carter, DJ Moore and X player, that's not who argues with that?
Yeah,
it's like you got 2 first-round picks.
And that's why I think trading down might make the most sense, because I've heard a lot of people talk about Poles has to nail this pick. And one of the things, you just said it right there, I think by acquiring DJ Moore, he's taken some pressure off himself to nail this pick, and he doesn't have to land a stud. He can use this number 9 pick to acquire some more assets and take more shots and still have DJ Moore. And instead of saying, oh, I got DJ Moore and, Paris Johnson, he can say, I got DJ Moore and Darnell Wright, or I got DJ Moore and Anton Harrison and a couple more picks. That'd be beautiful to me.
Speaking on Darnell Wright, we haven't even done that yet. I got to say, I know that He seems to be the flavor of the week with Bears Twitter, Bears fans. Everybody's now all of a sudden a Darnell Wright
He
fan.
was
And
a Senior Bowl standout with Getsy. I mean,
I know, and I gotta say, I mean, I think we were talking a little bit about this. I don't have any problem with Darnell Wright. I wasn't necessarily super high on the idea of him becoming a Bear at 9 or otherwise, but I have to say I've even come around to that. And I say this because if it happens, I hope Bears fans don't freak out. If he is selected at number 9 for the Chicago Bears, Darnell Wright, offensive tackle, right tackle specifically out of Tennessee, I don't think that there's a need for panic there. Again, this is my perspective. It doesn't mean that everybody has to agree with it, but at the end of the day, if you get your player at 18 or 9 or 23 or 6, yes, of course, you don't want to reach for a guy that you could have had in the 4th and draft him in the 1st, but for the most part, add about a half a round of enrichment, if you want to call it, for a prospect. If I think that Darnell Wright was possibly somebody that was going to get taken at 18 to 28, why do I even want to really mess around and trade back and then miss them? I don't mind if that's their guy and they've identified it as that's the guy at the end of Thursday night that they always wanted to walk away with. It was Darnell Wright, and sure they would have liked to have taken him at 32 if they could have, but they just wanted to get Darnell Wright, and it was pick number 9. I'm not sweating. Go get your guy.
I like that. It doesn't really matter what number a guy was picked. It matters whether or not they fit, and once they get into the building, if
Did they work out?
Yep, exactly, dead on. And that's the thing is, if you got a guy that you're higher in confidence that, hey, he's a guy, we worked with him at the Senior Bowl. Getsy told me firsthand, he knows this guy can pick up his system. He knows he can come in here and be a day one starter, and that's your guy. I'm with you 100% on that. That's a great point. I mean, that when it comes down to hitting the pick or missing the pick, and no matter where you are in the draft, there's just as many misses in the top 10 as there are the bottom half of the first round. So
absolutely.
And you get guys, you said it earlier, you get guys like Justin Jefferson later in the first round, or guys like T. Higgins and Deebo Samuel and DK Metcalf in the second round, A.J. Brown. So the draft is never a perfect science. So to me, it's always about value, finding guys that fit, and then also collecting extra picks. I'm a huge fan of that, and I love that Ryan Poles is too.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's one of those things that obviously we're all hoping for a trade down, and I mean, I would not be surprised. I mean, I know is it Jeff from the Bears blog and a few others have talked about their preference is still to find a way to move down. This team has plenty of needs, and frankly, I don't think that you can ever have enough, dart throws or lottery tickets in the draft. So to me, it makes all the sense in the world, but just understand you have to have somebody that's willing to tango. I know we all probably wish that you'd hear a trade today. You've got to let the board play out, and if that's going to happen, it's going to be something that happens around, pick 7, pick 6, pick 8, where it's like, oh,
9.
it's very
once you're on the clock,
yes, it's very clear that this player is still available.
I
ready
think
to
even
move
at
up.
7 or 8, in some years, there's guys like if it's a specific position like quarterback, and you're saying, hey, at pick 7, the guy at pick 8 is not taking a quarterback, then you can do it. But I think if a team moves up this year, it could be for a cornerback or a tackle, and there's nothing that's going to say the two teams in front of us, the Raiders and Falcons, that one of them won't take a tackle or a corner. So I don't think there's much chance at all that we trade the pick before we were on the clock, and it's going to come down to that. And then if we get an offer, hey, maybe you take it, but if not, he's going to roll with the best player on his board.
I mean, I love Peter Skoronski, and this is a perfect example and I would have no qualms. I'd be super happy if Skoronski was the pick, but I mean, do not be surprised if you see somebody like Poles go, hey, if there's another team that wants to come up and get the safest pick in the draft, a guy that they can sleep easy knowing we got a top 5 offensive lineman in our offensive line room, can put him in a multiple two positions. And sure, the Bears would end up passing on that guy, watching somebody go get him. But I would not be surprised if Poles is like, fine, so I don't get Skoronski. I'm fine and happy to go get Broderick Jones 4 picks later or whatever the case is. So there's an opportunity there. As I said, it's going to take 2 dance partners willing to talk, willing to tango, and, fingers crossed, let's hope that works out. But it goes back to the point that I don't think that there's a lot of options that you make a selection at 9, and the consensus is that was a piss poor move. I just don't think that exists.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's only a few options he can go. I mean, I think there's a couple guys on the line, obviously Tyree Wilson and Jalen Carter, and then a couple other guys are going to be, Lucas Van Ness, possibly a Miles Murphy.
You know me.
Or
love Van Ness.
You love Van Ness. You love that one. And then you got the tackles. I mean, any of the 4 I think could potentially be an option. I mean, with Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson Jr., Anton Harrison, and Darnell Wright. If they love one of those guys, like you said, and they make them the pick, hey, that's it. And then other than that, I think it's the 3 cornerback prospects, Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, and Joey Porter Jr. I don't think Bijan is an option at 9. That would be the biggest surprise of the year for me. I wouldn't be mad about it. I'd probably buy a Bijan jersey right away and love it. Love his time as a Bear, but it would be a huge surprise to me. And then any other position probably would too.
That's even a position to me that it's not a bad pick. I'm not like, what are you doing? Because again, this is the thing is at 9, there are very few picks that don't make sense. Again, I know we're talking running back evaluation and is that worth it? But I agree. It doesn't seem like the most sensible. But if you're talking about getting a weapon besides Fields that can take off the pressure and is a great player.
And then your 2 first-round picks are DJ Moore and Bijan Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it doesn't make the most sense to me because I think that you don't drop a player like Bijan in unless he's got a great line to run ahead of him. Your team is mostly built. You're
Eagles
looking
they're waiting for him 1 pick behind.
That's what I'm saying. That one makes a lot more sense, but at the same time,
we don't want to let them get him.
Well, this is the thing. I think that it's a few positions. It's not just running back, but linebackers, off-ball linebackers, another one of them. To me, I think we're at the point where you are now devaluing the position more than is right. I get it. I understand. You can get a good running back in the 4th or 5th, but let's be very clear here. Those guys are 80%, 70% of a guy like Bijan. They're the same way that they're 70 or 80% of a guy like McCaffrey or Barkley or, you name it, Jonathan Taylor. And I understand guys like Taylor and Chubb were picked in the 2nd, but understand that, you do those over, and it was very clear even at the time that those guys should have been in the 1st. So, I get it. Let's go ahead and devalue the position, but I do think that we're at a point now where people are calling running backs like they're just, a bag of potato chips that you can get on any day of the week. And I don't think that applies to every single guy.
Yeah, I think part of it is there's been a couple stats that came out recently, like the team's leading rusher of Super Bowl teams. They've been guys who were not drafted in the 1st round at all. They haven't been big names. But I think part of that has just been the way these teams have constructed, because the Chiefs, they actually did draft a running back in the 1st round just 3 years ago. They drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He just hasn't worked out, and Isaiah Pacheco has been better. But if they would have spent that 1st-round pick on Christian McCaffrey instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, not the same year, they didn't have that option. I'm just making a point here. If they would have hit the 1st-round pick at running back, then they would have won multiple Super Bowls with a 1st-round pick running back. And they did. They still have a 1st-round running back on the roster and won 2 Super Bowls. So
I mean, if that team up in the Bay, the 49ers, could find a way to keep Brock Purdy's elbow intact or Trey Lance's foot and ankle good or Jimmy G healthy, they'd be able to make that claim with McCaffrey as their running back. But
exactly.
I mean, that's
if the Titans had a better quarterback, they probably could have been in the running. I mean, the Bengals have Joe Mixon as well. People sleep on that. They lost the Super Bowl and then missed out, but they've had a Super Bowl contending team for multiple years with a high-paid running back.
Absolutely. I mean, look no further than the fact that, I don't think this gets talked about enough, but Trey Lance was brought into the 49ers as a way to expand the playbook and show people what Kyle Shanahan could do with a mobile quarterback in the run game. And that hasn't worked out, but they've been able to pivot nicely with McCaffrey. And this is where you look no further than, we can talk about running backs don't matter. McCaffrey was the cog in that machine that lifted that offense to a whole new level when he got there. And, I know it was a tough price to pay and everything. I guarantee you Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch would not look twice and say, well, they do it again every day of the week and double down on Sundays.
Or I wouldn't be mad if we took a Bijan or even a JSN. We didn't touch on JSN, but
and to me, that's the thing too, is and this is where I say it's a little bit more me than it is anybody else, but I'm not against adding weaponry. That's why we're talking about Bijan and others. I just don't want to cannibalize a room that's already been invested in so much. So how do I circumvent and get around that? And the answer to me is you can add weaponry via a tight end.
I love it.
Tight ends are cheap. You can get them in the 2nd with how deep this class is. It doesn't cannibalize your wide receivers. You want to run the ball, they can block. They can complement Cole Kmet. They can spell Kmet or Tanyan. Like there's all of a sudden we're just listing reasons on here about why a tight end makes sense.
Another
for the
deep
investment.
class, yeah. Tight end too.
This would probably drive Bears fans crazy, but to me, we talked about this the night that the DJ Moore trade went down when it was you, me, and Vyyper on the stream.
Okay.
I had talked about I like that cluster of 3 picks at the end of the second, early third. Because to me, that allows you to like hit almost back to back to back. Of course, there's a few picks in between. If you get to fill tight end's your splurge pick, go get your Fields another weapon. So you go pick up a tight end at the end of the second, early third. Ideally, Tucker Kraft, my tight end 1, would be sitting right there for you. That's Todd Heap 2.0.
So I would say
Yeah.
either. I would say with that one, I would do it either tight end or running back. Like if
Fine.
Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, or Jamar Gibbs are there, that's your pick.
Zach Charbonnet, Roshan Johnson. But, and then you're talking about you have 3 picks there. So let's just say you went offensive tackle. Then I can come back and go get tight end, D tackle. I can come back and get cornerback, tight end, D line. Like, that's a good cluster of 3 in the same range to go, I'm just going to hit back to back to back on the final needs. And then now we start talking about the 4th where we're not compensatory, but you get that Eagles 4th round pick. And all of a sudden you start talking about, okay, we took care of most of the major needs up top. We got the offensive lineman.
If you do that going into day 3, and then you have the first pick of the 4th and that second pick, and then you got 2 fits, that's going to be a fun day.
That's what I'm talking about, where you can almost enter day 3 going, we took care of most of what we needed. We got a corner, we got a defensive lineman, we got an offensive lineman, maybe we got a tight end or a running back. Here's day 3. What do you want to splurge on? You want to go get a couple more DNs? You want to go get a nickel? You want to go get a D tackle?
You want to get safety to replace Eddie Jackson in a couple of years? There's just so many options there. You want a receiver now? You want to grab a Andre Yoshivas or a Jaden Reed or someone like that?
That's what I'm saying. Like that, and that you're lining up to my point, which is why to me it just doesn't make sense for JSN at 9. So why would I spend number 9 on JSN or Quentin Johnston or Zay Flowers or whoever when he doesn't have a spot right now?
To me, I just think we have too many needs. Yeah, like we just have too many needs on this roster right now at premium positions: right tackle, defensive end, 3 tech, and then even nose tackle. Billings is a good guy, but he's on a 1-year deal.
Well, because that's what we're talking about. Is that
and then corner.
You hit it right on the head. Swift is like, JSN doesn't get to play now. So at best, we let Mooney and Claypool walk, which I don't think that's happening, but you let both of them walk. Then your receiver that you pick this year may have a chance. And I'm not spending number 9 for a guy to redshirt this year.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at, A.T. Perry, Jaden Reed, Michael Wilson, Trey Palmer, Parker Washington, Xavier Hutchinson, Yoshivas, Trey Tucker, Bryce Ford Wheaton, Ronnie Bell, Matt Landers. Like, there are all these guys that I can go, hey, I'm just going to let you sit for this year. You can be wide receiver 5. There's no rush. And then we either let Mooney or Claypool or whoever walk. And now in year 2 and year 3, when you're more developed, now you get a chance. That makes much more sense in team building than spending number 9 and going, guess what? You're logjam. You're fighting for wide receiver 4 reps.
Now, to play devil's advocate, I just always have to. The only point I would make is if they did make that pick, one of the things I will say to kind of counter that is you can never guarantee all 3 of those wide receivers are going to be healthy. And more than likely, he would start some games this year. Like, one of those guys is going to end up hurt at some point. I'm knocking on wood because I don't.
He may be able to play outside, but I think he's much more Hunter Renfrow than he is A.J. Brown.
Answer this question. Who do you think is in our slot most in our current receiver room now? I'll give you my take first. I think base, Claypool's going to be your power slot. Mooney's going to be your Z. DJ Moore's going to be your X. But I also think Getsy's going to move him around a lot. Claypool will also play some X. DJ Moore will play some slot as well.
I do think that they will move around plenty, but you and I are simpatico. It's funny, we've not talked about that. We're simpatico.
Yeah, we actually hadn't talked about that.
I think that, to me, it makes the most sense to put – I think they like Mooney's speed on the outside.
Yep. To me, he's not a little shifty guy. To me, he's not a slot receiver.
No.
He's a Deshaun Jackson, Tyler Lockett. Like he's beating you in man coverage downfield.
Yeah, it's not, and I don't want to make it sound like Darnell's like some one-dimensional player. He's shifty enough; he can get in and out of his breaks. But
yeah, he can make some plays over the middle, but he doesn't make his living there.
He's not Emmanuel Sanders. He's not Cole Beasley. He's not Julian Edelman levels of shifty that you're going to put him in the slot and just go, okay, dice people out the way that like JSN could.
Or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah,
exactly.
That's what JSN is to me. He's Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, and that's the point. So to me, it's like, let me put Mooney out there, and I think they like him on the perimeter to say, go toast people with your speed.
Mm-hmm.
And then DJ Moore, you're our X receiver, so we're going to plan the offense around you. You are going to be the lead read on most of our play design and architecture and structure.
But that's
And
another,
then,
you go lead into that. There's also, they'll say, since you're our lead guy, on plays where our slot receiver's our lead guy, we're going to move you in the slot, and we're going to have Claypool out here at X because he's big enough and fast enough to play that as well.
yeah, and we'll send him on kind of like an alert route. We'll put him on the go. And if you don't like what you see with DJ Moore or Mooney, your backside option is big 6'4", 240, 4.3 speed, 4.4 speed, running down the yeah. I mean, there's options.
I get so excited thinking about this offense.
Because that's what I'm saying is like that's why, and I hope we've outlined it for Bears fans listening. That's why I don't see a JSN rule.
Yeah,
because we're just planning
right now. It's so when you look at our wide receiver room right now compared to last year with Equinemius St. Brown and Dante Pettis out there most of the time, like it's night and day. Like this receiver room is beautiful.
And look, I love wide receivers. Trust me, I do. The market's as high as it's ever been. But all that talk about Moore and Mooney and Claypool is fantastic. But if Justin's on his ass, it means nothing.
Exactly. So that's why I think our wide receiver room's good enough to pass.
Correct.
Our right tackle right now is a glaring hole. Like Larry Borum, Alex Leatherwood, good guys. I like them. If we're going in the season with one of them as our starter after the draft day, I'm terrified. So we need a right tackle at it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. I think so many Bears fans forget about Alex Leatherwood. I'm actually pretty high on him.
Me too.
I was pounding the table for them to take him on waiver claims. And I was told by Greg Gabriel and a few others, like, that's not going to happen. And sure enough, it happened. So, I mean, I like Alex Leatherwood. I was a fan of it. But I also thought he should have been redshirted last year. And he wasn't for whatever reason. I know there were
especially
injuries.
After the mono. I thought especially after he missed so much. He missed like 6 weeks with mono. It's like after that point, like, he's lost some strength probably. So
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, and this is where we talk about, like, could polls get shifty and go, you guys are just thinking that we don't have anybody, but Alex Leatherwood's been in the lab. He's working.
He could have a plan like, hey, it's going to be Alex Leatherwood battling against Larry Borum and possibly Carter Warren or Warren.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's, to me, I'm not, again, Bears fans,
I'd be scared though.
If you want to sleep on Leatherwood, go ahead and sleep on him. I'm just saying there was something there, and I know it wasn't all pretty, and we want to talk about it. But yes,
I said he got beat by Hassan Reddick, he
got beat by the best defensive front in football. Yep. Forgive him, God forbid.
That's why I can't write him off yet, but I also can't walk into him as a day one starter. But if you do want to, this is a great topic you brought up here. This is something polls could do, and like you said, I don't think it's him necessarily thinking I'm smarter than everybody. But it's him thinking, I don't have to do what Twitter boy 123 tells me. He's like, I know we got Alex Leatherwood, and I know I can bring in a guy like Wanye Morris or Carter Warren or somebody late in the draft to compete with him, and I'm fine at right tackle. And if that's how he feels, fans on Twitter will freak out. I'll probably just mute more people, but it means that we're getting a stud in the defensive player probably in the first round, and I'd be happy about that.
And that's where, again, I like offensive linemen in the first, and I mean, Swift, you to let me know, but I think my rankings, my feelings on the offensive linemen are very different from the usual. So
they are.
I'm not as high on Paris Johnson as most, and
I'll flash him on the screen. Don't worry.
Yeah, nothing nothing bad about like Broderick or anything like that. My top guys are DeWand and Anton Harrison, and Darnell Wright's solid, and you have these players. So to me, it's just one of those things where, again, I love offensive linemen, but I think that this defense needs a jolt of juice.
To me, also, this is a point that isn't talked about much, but I don't have like stats for it or anything in history because it's just too much time and I don't have time for it. But offensive tackle seems like it busts a lot more in the first round.
Yep.
Like there are defensive end busts, but some of those guys that end up being busts at defensive end, they still become rotational players or situational pass rushers, where if you're a bust at right tackle, you either go to guard or the bench.
We don't see a lot of people talk about this, and it's not like I'm trying to hate on the wide zone scheme, but I mean, God, look no further than like Mitchell Schwartz will tell you when he was in Cleveland starting out his career that, and when Kyle Shanahan was there, that offensive system, that offensive scheme is like a cheat code for young or inexperienced or lesser than offensive lines. It's easier to plug people into this scheme and just plug athletes in and go, look, you're always going to kind of just be on the move, and we're going to get the defense going laterally, and you'll be able to have combo blocks with people and pass people off, and you'll always win the geometry wars of being able to get the angle on people. you don't necessarily need an all-star to play this scheme. And I think that's kind of what Ryan Poles was telling people last year with, watch me take this Southern Utah kid. He's an athlete, and it's not, he doesn't need to be Tyron Smith. He doesn't need to be Lane Johnson. He doesn't need to be any of these Brian O'Neill. He doesn't need to be Christian Darrisaw. He just needs to be an athlete in space that can connect on the move. And he doesn't need to be a world beater because this scheme doesn't need that.
I love
Whereas,
that, yeah.
and that's the thing with defensive players, the best athletes in the NFL are defensive ends.
Yep.
Truly,
Yeah.
they're
Oh,
the
yeah.
freakiest.
They're the freaks of the NFL. Yeah.
They go first. They go early. So if you're at 9 and you want to go get yourself a Lucas Van Ness or a Tyree Wilson or a Jalen Carter if they're there, or one of these guys, a Nolan Smith, whoever that is, if you want to go get a peak apex athlete at number 9, who am I to argue with it? Because one thing's for sure, you will not get that same level of athlete in the second, third, fourth round. It just doesn't exist.
Same with corner too. They're the same. That's another position that goes
Yep.
high a lot. Like, I love a lot of the corners in the second round, actually, in the third. But you're not going to get a guy with the upside of a Devin Witherspoon or a Joey
Yep.
Porter. But so it's the same. But I agree with you, and I think that's a great point, and it's something that isn't talked about a lot because a lot of people just think it's pigeonholed that we're taking a tackle in the first round. And you made a great point there that he did it last year. We had just as bad of an offensive line last year, and he did not take a tackle in the second round. He had 2 picks there, didn't take a tackle in the third round, and then traded down multiple times in the 5th round before finally taking a tackle. And then he didn't grab a tackle in free agency this year. So it makes sense if he grabs a tackle in the first round. No one's going to question it. But if he doesn't, you're going to have fans freaking out overnight, first off. So be ready for that. But I'm with it. I wouldn't mind it. And I think if Ryan Poles can do that, if he knows this scheme doesn't need a top guy, and him and Cunningham are confident they can find a guy in day 2 or day 3, I'm with it. Like, I would rather do it. Give me a tackle who's going to come in and work hard and bust his ass off and protect Justin.
And this is the thing is, to me, you saw them, and whether we agree with it or not, we saw them patch it together last year by grabbing O'Reilly Reef on the eve of training camp and Michael Schofield. And I know it sounds like let's not go that route again, but again, whether you like it or not, I'm just trying to pitch that
George Fant.
every year after the draft, there are veteran cuts, and the Bears still have, I think, around like $40 million that they have to spend. They've got to spend it somewhere. And sure, some of that's in contract extensions and otherwise. Don't be surprised if you end up seeing a guy like Brandon Parker, right tackle with the Raiders, who ends up busting loose because maybe they take a tackle earlier in the draft. They have offensive line needs. You end up seeing a guy like Tyron Smith who, he's on the end of that contract. That money's expensive. They have Tyler Smith. They have Terrence Steele, who they put a second-round tender on. Does he break free because of expensive and his injury history, or can you throw a late pick for him? What about, guys like Arizona's kind of a mess right now, and they need offensive line help, so I don't think that they do it. But, we're sitting here and we're looking at Josh Jones, who's playing guard for them now. But Josh Jones is an athletic freak. What happens if he ends up kind of wrestling free because things change? It's a new regime there. It's no longer Cliff Kingsbury. He ends up hitting there's options here to where you could see them after the draft go. And fans will go crazy. They always do. But just trust in the process. Believe that we have this and it'll work out. And again, I'm not even telling you that I'm not the best at taking my own practice and words there because I'm very impatient. I want the same instant gratification that so many others.
You get mad when they don't take your guys, Jordan.
You believe me, that's going to happen this year, and I'm trying to learn to deal with it because to me, I'm one of one here. It's not the way that it's ever going to happen, but to me, it's Van Ness or Sciorty. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Carter is going to be there. I don't think Wilson's going to be there.
I don't think Carter or Wilson are there either. But I'm an optimistic guy, so I don't want Carter in Detroit, and I want him to be there at number 9. Like, that's my dream for the draft. Like, I didn't think Fields would be there either. But I went in hoping.
Swift, that would be Ryan Poles doing the ultimate finesse on the entire league, and somebody's got to.
That's why I said it's a dream. Like, if you
one
get
of the great
same
creators
guy you would have taken at 1.
One of the great content creators on Twitter or something has got to do that like meme where the sunglasses and the hat pop on Ryan Poles' face, because if he ends up finding a way to go. I was at 1 where everybody thought we'd take Jalen Carter and he's the best player of the draft, and then I moved back to 9 before the legal issues were all figured out. And here we are a couple months later, and I'm still getting the player that everybody thought I'd take at 1, and he's consensus best player in the draft, and I got him at 9. Yeah, you deserve the meme where the glasses are popping down, and it's. I'm telling you, like it's.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. Yeah, I mean, if that that's what I'm saying. That's my dream scenario. Just like in 2021, my dream scenario was Justin Fields. I think my dream scenario this year is you sit there at 9, Jalen Carter's on the board, you take him. If Jalen Carter's not on the board, I hope someone is on the board that another team is interested enough to offer us at least a second-round pick or a high second-round pick swap even. Like anything to get us a better pick in the second round. I'll move down a few spots and then reassess the board in a couple picks.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. That's where you were saying, like, they're not going to take your guys. You're going to be upset. You're right, because they're going to pass Skoronski. I'm going to be pissed off. After that, it's Lucas Van Ness. That's the guy to me that is an edge who can bump into 3 tech if you want. He has unlocked potential. He is not. And this is why I also don't think he'd be picked. 9 is rich for a guy that needs a lot of refinement. I think the ceiling is, potential's through the roof for a guy like Van Ness.
That's another reason I want to trade down. I think if we trade down a couple spots, Van Ness is a higher probability.
Sure. And that's to me where, again, this is just Jordan's preference board. It's Carter, it's Skoronski, it's Van Ness. Then after that, and of course, DeJuan Jones is my offensive tackle 1. I just don't think that's happening based on everything that we've seen. The one that I do wish, and I could see them kind of liking it, is Anton Harrison.
Okay.
To me, you move back a couple picks, you get Anton Harrison, because I think as much as we like Paris Johnson or Broderick Jones, I got to be honest, I think that if you're moving back, that's probably gone by the time that you get your pick. Because if you're moving back, sure, somebody could take corner, but tackle's up there too. Let's say you're at 9, you move back to 15, 16. I'm not saying every tackle is going to go between there, but it's pretty fair and reasonable to assume that Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones would probably be gone by the time you get back on the board at 15 or 16.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I don't think Paris makes it to 15 or 16 at all. I think Broderick, there's a chance, but Paris, there's no way. If they don't take him at number 9, it's pretty much gone if he's even there at 9.
Happen this way, but this is the danger of even moving back to 12. You're looking at Philly and Tennessee at 10 and 11 respectively. Philadelphia, Lane Johnson's getting up there in age. They are the type, they always invest in line talent. They have no problem redshirting a tackle and saying, learn behind the best in Lane Johnson.
They just did it with their defensive tackle last year.
And when Lane departs, Paris Johnson, you're next up. Okay, so fine. Paris is gone at 10. Well, you're crazy if you don't think Tennessee is. This is Ran Carthon, understands how important the trenches are coming from the 49ers. They just let Taylor Lewan walk. They've got Nick Petit-Friere off of Ohio State, right tackle.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've thought all along that if the Texans trade up would be to get a weapon for their quarterback, but with DeMeco Ryans at the helm, he could say, look, I got my quarterback. Now I want my weapon to go with that.
Yep. It's just, to me, I look at it like the Eagles and the Titans both could be in the market for tackles, and it's not too outrageous. So in that scenario, even just moving back, it's just 3 spots, I'm just going from 9 to 12, you may have lost 2 tackles right there.
Yeah, no, that's true. We're going to be about a week away when you guys are watching this. Jordan, always great talking with you, man. Do you have any final thoughts about the Bears draft you want to throw out before we go?
Yeah, I really hope that Bears fans just sit back and enjoy the ride. I know that sounds cliche and silly, but understand it. Hopefully, I think
trust
that Swift
the process.
Trust the process. I think Swift and I have done a good job trying to enrich kind of your knowledge about the board, the likeliness, the prospects, the draft philosophies, and take one thing, understand that the Bears have plenty of needs. This is a time to enjoy. And I won't go on too much of a tangent here, but let's go deep on this. When you're team building, there are different levels and different stages. You have teams that are just wiping it clean. That was last year with the Bears. You're seeing others do. The Cardinals are kind of getting ready to do that. Like, they're trying to pick up the pieces. Titans are wiping it clean, starting over. Then you have teams that are in the rebuilding process. They're spending. The Bears still have about $40 million that they need to spend this year. They're trying to re-up some contracts. They've got tons of draft capital. They've got a quarterback developing. They just spent some money in free agency. They are the equivalent of the Jacksonville Jaguars last year that were like, hey, let's just spend some money and dump it in. This is an exciting time. And I'd argue in many ways it's almost like more exciting than when your team's built.
Exactly.
Because it's kind of a weird analogy, but it's like the cocoon stage. So as you slowly start to drop these pieces in, you slowly start closing off other avenues to build. And I mean, and look, I'm not telling you don't re-sign your talent, but like if you re-sign Cole Kmet, you're probably not getting another tight end. You put your money on Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool. Well, that's a lot of money invested in receivers. Don't expect them to draft any new talent. They're rolling with that receiver room. So this is the time before everything is solidified and crystallized in, where they've clearly made declarations about this is this pick here and this is this money here, where there's enough room in the air to say we're going to drop this piece in here and we're going to get creative. And like, I'll give you an example. I'd love to see the Bears trade up in the second with the Rams. The Rams are trying to rebuild right now. They're the definition of a graveyard team trying to rebuild. They need picks. They, remember all them fuck them picks? They're trying to get those picks back now. So I would love to see the Bears go like, hey, Les Snead, you're at the top of the second. We'd love to go get, one of those guys that should have been a first that slipped out. What's the cost to move up?
And that's where, when it comes to my favorite guy in the draft, it's Adetomiwa Adebawore, and he's nowhere in our range right now. I think if that's about our only chance if we're going to get him, either trading back far or trading up in the second.
And that's the thing is like, that's what I want you all to realize is enjoy it. This is the time where they get to do all this freaky stuff where they're moving pieces. And I guess one other thing is don't always assume that the asset is what it is on face value. A draft pick does not have to be a player. It can be, I should say, it doesn't have to be a rookie.
Yeah.
It can be another veteran. You may end up, I'll give you, and this is not a exciting or sexy one, but Jonah Williams doesn't apparently want to be with the Bengals anymore. Like, you're looking at a 5th or 6th round pick going, oh, that's this rookie. And no, that's maybe Jonah Williams. That's some other player they would never do this. But hey, Dalvin Cook's on the market. Like, we're just going to, what's this 4th round pick? And I thought we were going to use it for Roschon Johnson. It's like, nope, we want immediate talent in Dalvin Cook. Like, those are the things that are out there. So enjoy the ride, enjoy the process, trust it, get excited about what's being built, because there will become a point where, and it happened with Pace, it happens with so many others, where you've built your team, you've made your bed, now you have to lay in it, and now it's time to produce with what you've invested in. And the Bears are not there yet, but they're about less than a year away after this draft. As Ryan Poles has started to say, this is how we're spending money. It's $10 million a year on Nate Davis, and it's top 4 money in the league at off-ball linebacker for Tremaine Edmonds. And we're just slowly plugging away where you're going to start watching these options disappear. And
you nailed it pretty much. I mean, the next year is probably going to be the most exciting time in my lifetime to be a Bears fan. And Poles is going to be, he's already started kind of. He's put a couple of his stamps on the roster. He signed Tremaine Edmonds. He traded for DJ Moore. He traded for Chase Claypool. He signed Nate Davis. But in the next year and 2 weeks, we're going to have gone through his 2nd draft, his 3rd draft, and his next free agency, because he's going to have a lot of money in free agency next year. This team is going to change from right now to a year from now. It's going to look so different, and I just love the direction it's going. I couldn't be more excited. Jordan, you nailed it dead on the head. Enjoy the ride, guys. Trust the process. Give Poles a chance to build this team. That's all I got to say about it. I love it, Jordan.
Swifty, as always, I appreciate you having me. This has been a blast. Bears fans, thank you for tuning in. I hope this has been insightful and, like I said, enriching on a level of your knowledge and your excitement for the draft class. And as always, no better content provider to follow than this guy over here, Swifty Sports. But if you're looking for just more information on the draft class, anything Bears or otherwise, I talk pretty much NFL all day with just various teams. If you have any questions, if you're for some reason here and you're not a Bears fan, you can find me at Jordan T. Silver on Twitter. Thank you, Swifty.
Much love, man. It was great talking to you. This was an awesome show, man. I can't wait for fans to see it.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you so much.
No problem, brother. Thank you. What's up, guys? Swifty here. I got my man Vyyper in the house, the man about tech. He's here today. Vyyper, go ahead and say what's up to everybody.
What's up, people? This your boy Vyyper, the man about tech. Back again with my boy Swifty. We about to talk about the Chicago Bears and this upcoming NFL draft, which cannot get here fast enough. We still got to wait 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks too long, Swift. It's 2 weeks too long, my dude.
It really is, man. That's one of the reasons I wanted to put this special together. Should be releasing on 4/20. If you guys are watching this, it should be April 20th. Give you about a week till the NFL draft. But yeah, it can't come quick enough, man. It's one of those things. I'm kind of in a lull right now. I'm so ready for the NFL draft, man. So I got my man Vyyper here. Vyyper, we're talking about the NFL draft, man. What are you most excited about when it comes to this NFL draft?
Well, obviously, as you know, we are both into the Chicago Bears. I am very interested to see what they do at pick number 9. There's been a lot of chatter lately about maybe we might end up taking Jalen Carter. I don't even know if he's going to be there. Even if he is there, I don't know if that could be the right move. There have been talks about us maybe trading down, which I personally think might be the best move, because the drop from 9 to 53 is a little too steep for me. I don't like that. So I kind of hope we pick up an earlier second rounder via a trade down, just to acquire more picks and have a better selection in that second round. Ryan Poles has shown, if nothing else, that he is flexible AF. So he's really in a position where he can do whatever he wants. He can stay at 9 and pick the best player available, or whatever he wants to do, or he could trade that pick and trade down and acquire an additional second round pick. I don't know, man. Like, there's so much possibility. Like, who knows?
Man, you nailed it on the head, man. Right there. That the weight right now from 9 to 53, it's a little bit too much. If he can move down in the first round and then get a higher pick in the second round and close that gap, get us 2 more talented players, in my opinion, it's not a real top-heavy draft. And for the people saying we need, a lot of people, like the backlash I get on that one is people will say, well, we need a player. You got to get a player. We had the number. We got that player already. DJ Moore is a 24-year-old all-pro style receiver who basically counts as your first-round pick. So even if we move down a little bit at number 9 and you don't get some guy that everybody wants, if Jalen Carter's there, I can't say no. I mean, as long as everything checks out behind the scenes and they're okay. The one question is, people have said, does he love football? If he loves football, then yes, you got to do it. I mean, if he doesn't, then obviously that's going to set off red flags and he won't be a Chicago Bear. But I love it, man. A trade down sounds awesome to me. We do have DJ Moore, but right there, man, the second day, all those picks on the second round, that's where we're going to have fun. Is there anything you're excited about on the second day?
We do have those collection of picks at the end of the second round, so that could be interesting to see how Ryan Poles navigates that, depending on who's available. Now, he may trade some of those picks, we don't know, but as of right now, 53, 61, 64. So those are all within 10 picks of each other. So that could be a very interesting time for Chicago Bears fans.
I'm more excited about that second day than I am the first day. I mean, all anybody really talks about is that number 9, but when you got those 3 picks there right in a row on day 2, hopefully he is able to switch it up a little bit so he moves them around. They're not so clustered together, but if they do stay that clustered together, that's going to be 3 really good picks. Boom, boom, boom. My brain will be spinning during that time either way, man.
You know what, Swifty, though? Let's attack the elephant in the room. I'm here, you here. This is something that me and you have a difference of opinion on, so let's just talk about the elephant in the room. Jalen Carter. We need to talk about this, Swift.
Okay.
Because there's been a lot of talk, as you know, about him potentially being there at 9 for the Bears. And you're either on the side of we draft him, or you're either on the side of we don't draft him. And like I said, this is where me and you have some, like, we kind of disagree with this. Here's my thing, right? The Bears and Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus have both been on the record as saying that they want players who love football, who eat, sleep, breathe football, and they want high character guys. So given what they've told us and what they've been working through and what they've been executing on since they've been in this organization, that is not Jalen Carter, in my opinion. Now, you have rightfully said that the kid is going through some stuff. Obviously, he lost his friend in the accident back in January, and he showed up to his pro day 9 pounds heavier. He didn't do much at the combine for obvious reasons. He had a warrant out for his arrest, so you can't really do nothing when the police are after you. But then my thing is, okay, so you didn't do much at the combine. Then you show up to your pro day 9 pounds heavier, and from all intents and purposes, for what I see or what I saw, he looked sloppy. He just looked sloppy. He looked out of shape. He looked winded. Like, he just didn't look ready to execute at his pro day. And my thought process is, if you are a college athlete and you know that the combine, your pro day, these are some of the biggest days in your life as it relates to where you might go in the NFL draft, especially if you're trying to go in the top 10, you're going to be ready. Like, most collegiate athletes are going to be ready for these days because they know that these are the days that they're going to have the most eyes on them between the combine and pro day. But Jalen Carter came into pro day 9 pounds heavier, looked kind of sloppy, even though I did hear that he did some good things as well. But for the most part, he looked sloppy. He was heavier. He didn't look like a top 10 pick at his pro day. But I have heard you say that, you know what, the pro day kind of overrated. It's more about the interviews and the tape. And my thing is, okay, the tape is good, but you just can't show up on Sundays and be great. There is Monday to Saturday that you have to practice and work at it and get better. And my biggest question about Jalen Carter, Swifty, is he going to show up Monday through Saturday to be ready for Sunday? That's where I'm at.
So, and that's where I'm kind of 50-50 on it. And I will say that I think the pro day and all that's overrated. It is kind of like the underwear Olympics. Most of the time, yes. In a normal situation, 90% of the time, you want to show up to your pro day in the best shape of your life. Now, obviously, the reason I say with Jalen Carter, he had so much other stuff going on. Like you said, he had a warrant for his arrest at the combine. There's a lot of stuff going through your mind there. He's a 20-year-old kid. Like, showing up a little bit overweight at the pro day, that's not a bother to me because of what he did at Georgia. Monday through Saturday, every week the last 2 years, he's been the best defensive player on the best defense in the entire country. And they've won back-to-back national championships. So, to me, it comes down to they have to get to know the guy. And that's why they've interviewed him twice. That's why he gets a top 30 visit. Kids make mistakes, When you're young, you're going to make mistakes. When people will just say character concerns, just like with Justin Fields, they said work ethic. I think one of the things always has to do with race. I never like to play the race card, but a lot of times when it's a young, colored guy, if they make any mistake, someone's going to go after him in that way. With Justin Fields, he didn't do anything. He brought the Big Ten together, but he still had these analysts out there calling him lazy when he was out there. He's the first guy in practice, last guy out, but he still got those narratives. So the same things kind of creep in with Jalen Carter. These people who don't know him personally and just said, oh, he got this ticket, he showed up overweight, he doesn't love football. They just put those two together and make the stretches. To me, that doesn't mean he doesn't love football. That's just a narrative that people are throwing around out there that gets lazy. But it's a question, though. It is a real question. Does he? And that's what Ryan Poles has to answer himself. And that's the only way you can do that is by getting to know the player and talking to him in person and figuring out where his head's at. And if they're comfortable with that, I'm 100% on board because the tape says he's the best player in this entire draft. And if you can get him at number 9 and he fits our biggest weakness on our defense, I'm signed, sealed, and delivered. I want it. But you're dead right. I mean, that is the question that everybody's asking. But to me, it's unanswered right now. The people, I can't say that he doesn't have character problems or he does love football, but there's nothing out there that says he doesn't. Right now, that's a question that it comes down to personal, and the GM, Ryan Poles, is going to have to get to know him and make himself comfortable with that question.
This decision is going to be the biggest measurement to this date in Ryan Poles' legacy. If he takes Jalen Carter, it's boom or bust, basically. I don't really feel either way about it. I mean, if we draft him, I'm not going to be mad about it. I'll root for him. I hope he succeeds or whatever. And if we don't draft him, I'll understand that too. I just wonder, Ryan, I just wonder, Swift. I don't know why
I'm Ryan Poles now. I'm Ryan Poles.
No, Swifty, I just wonder if Ryan Poles is really comfortable with the idea of drafting Jalen Carter. I wonder where his head's at on that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair to think. And I think, honestly, I think when it comes down to it, if Jalen Carter's personality checks out, he's not going to be there on the board at 9. I think the Lions will probably take him. The Seahawks will probably take him, depending how the draft falls out. He's almost too good. If he is there at 9, then that means those other teams weren't comfortable with him. So then it does become a bit of a bigger question. But if Ryan Poles is comfortable with him and we select him at 9, I'm comfortable with him because I'm 100% on board with Ryan Poles. I love the character he has. I love the integrity he has. I love how honest he is. And when he talks to the media and his plan that he's putting together, he's not scared. He doesn't. If you're a guy, you can trade away Khalil Mack, and then you can sign a guy like Larry Ogunjobi, and then not sign him because he fails the physical. You have brass, You know what I'm talking. You got brass balls, man. I mean, he doesn't care what the fans say. Like, he's trading away Khalil Mack. He's trading away Roquan Smith. He's not here to make us happy in social media. He's here to get wins. And that's the bottom line. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what he will be judged by. I think he's going to turn this franchise around and get a lot of wins. And when that happens, it can neutralize something like that. If he did take Jalen Carter and missed on the pick, part of the reason why he would be able to take a risk like that is because he already got DJ Moore and another second rounder and a first rounder next year and a second rounder the year after. So if Jalen Carter was a bust, you still have extra chances to make up for that going forward and a player in DJ Moore. So I think he can take a risk like that. Even if he was a bust, I mean, there's always going to be fans out there hating, you know. But that's what I love about Ryan Poles. He doesn't care about those fans. He cares about the team he puts on the field. And I think this process is going to lead to a lot of wins.
Yeah, I am with you. I love what Ryan Poles has done. And my thing is, he's literally done everything that he laid out pretty much since day one, since the introductory press conference. He told us what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and he's done nothing but that.
It's just, I can't wait for this draft. I mean, free agency came and went so fast, and then it just kind of been a lull till the draft, and I'm just ready for it. There has been a lot of the talk about those guys. For a while, it was Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. Now that we traded down to 9, it's kind of mixed up. Landing Jalen Carter at 9 when he's the guy I probably would have taken at number 1 is crazy.
Could you imagine how crazy that would be if we did draft him at 9? Like you said, a lot of people had maybe potentially taking him at 1, or if trading down to maybe 2 or 3 and still taking him. But then somehow he falls to 9 and we still draft him. I mean, damn. Wow.
That'd be insane, man. Honestly, I think I'd be through the roof with that. Like, that'd be probably the coolest draft scenario that could happen for me. I'd rather a trade down. A trade down would probably be my favorite. But if Jalen Carter's there, like, and Poles is happy with it, I'm buying a Jalen Carter jersey day one if that happens, because he's the next Warren Sapp type player to me.
The other thing, what you kind of mentioned to me earlier, that the Chicago Bears, by and large, don't really take risks, at least not in our recent history. They haven't really taken many risks on questionable character guys. And sometimes you need a couple of those questionable character guys on your team.
You need them.
You need them dogs. Yeah, you need them dogs, bro. You need them dogs. So
now see, taking them last year, and I argued last year that's why they didn't take George Pickens, is because you're building the foundation in the locker room. Once you have that foundation in place, bringing in a guy with some questions, the other guys in the locker room are supposed to step up and help him out. Now, when you do that, when you're trying to put a foundation in, it can cause chaos. But now that he's had a whole year, they've laid this foundation, they got leaders in the locker room, like Eddie Jackson and Tremaine Edmonds, they're not going to put up with no BS. They'll smack him in the back of his helmet.
So is this the time where the Chicago Bears organization finally takes a swing on maybe a questionable character guy?
I'd like to see it. I really like Jalen Carter, but at the same time, people make a good point with I mean, you got to mitigate the risk. My nightmare scenario, honestly, I don't want him to go to the Lions.
I have heard everybody say it, but yeah, that would be kind of scary. Yeah.
If Don Burr's out there, look, I don't want you guys to get the Lions, okay? I don't want you to get Jalen Carter. I don't want it. I don't want that man in our division. I don't want it.
Yeah.
That's how good I think he is. So, I mean, it's just wild.
So moving past Jalen Carter, I'm curious to get your thoughts on another possibility. There's been some chatter out there, maybe not at 9, but maybe if we trade down, there's been some chatter out there, actually at 9 too, but there's been chatter that Jackson Smith-Njigba could still be an option in round 1. How are you feeling about this?
This one's tough for me. I mean, the sensible side of me says we should probably go offensive line or defensive line. But the kid in me, the Madden player, the fantasy football guy, having JSN and DJ Moore and Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, that gives defensive coordinators nightmares. And if you're talking about giving Justin Fields the weapons to succeed, that would put us at one of the best receiver cores in the entire league. So
easily,
you can't argue with it if that is the pick.
Again, it goes back to having to wait 2 more weeks, man. I'm ready. And I know where I'll be on. I don't know what y'all going to be on draft night, but guess where I'm going to be on draft night? Washington Swifty.
You're going to be here with me live, right?
Oh, I didn't know if you announced that or not, but yeah.
I'm baby.
Coming, yo.
Yep.
That's right.
You co-hosting with me, boy.
That's right. I'm gonna be here on the channel with Swifty. We gonna be doing this on draft night. Absolutely.
We got to. It's gonna be wild, man. It's gonna be wild. I can't wait. All right, so Vyyper, let me get your thoughts on if Ryan Poles were to take a skill player at 9, like Jackson Smith-Njigba we just talked about, Bijan Robinson, versus someone in the trenches, that right tackle or a defensive lineman. What are your thoughts there?
So yeah, this is another thing that I've been thinking about, because it's so much difficult to find top level skill players, in my opinion, instead of over finding top level linemen. Like, I know that later on in the draft, you can get decent linemen, offensive defensive linemen can be had later in the draft, but it's a lot harder to find skill players later in the draft. Although I know it has happened before, so I know it's a thing. I know I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's just easier to identify and locate top tier skill players earlier in the draft. So what do we do in 9? All of the mock drafts that I've been looking at and seeing lately online have us slotting getting an offensive lineman, which, and of course we need that. So I'm not saying that we don't need that. But Ryan Poles found Braxton Jones in the 5th round last year, and Braxton Jones ended up being our starting left tackle. Probably the most important position on the offensive line.
Nailed it.
Got him in the 5th round last year. So Ryan Poles has already identified that he can find linemen later in the draft. If there is a skill player there at 9 that will help our team get better, I mean, at this point, we're talking about best player available, probably. I mean, given what Ryan Poles has done in the past, I mean, do you pass up the opportunity? I don't know. Maybe Luke Van Ness, if he's there at 9, which he probably will be, or Tyree Wilson. I think one of those players might be to move over a lineman, per se.
Okay. Yeah, so edge rusher, Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Tyree Wilson, all those guys fit the bill as well. The only thing I love all 3 of those guys. The only thing when I look at the whole draft is the defensive line talent is just so much better the deeper you go in the draft than it is the other positions, that you can get somebody with similar skills to a Lucas Van Ness or a Nolan Smith or a Tyree Wilson in the 2nd round with, a Zach Harrison or a Keon White or a Derek Hall, Isaiah Foskey. There's just a lot of pass rushers in this draft. Whereas wide receivers, like you said, JSN is like the one guy. There's a lot of guys you can get maybe day 3 that I do like, but they don't have that upside, not the JSN upside. It's just not there with anyone else in the draft. To me, it's tough. I mean, it's kind of like we have a few holes, and you're like, we can fix one of them at 9. And then in the 2nd round, we should be able to fix a couple, but there's such a long gap there.
Yep.
You're taking a big question on who's going to still be on the board. And that's the biggest thing with me, is we kind of addressed it earlier. That gap right now is just too far for me to stick at 9 and take a pick, unless it's someone like Jalen Carter that he's really happy with and you're getting a steal. If not, I'm working those phones and I'm trying to move down. Even if it's not a great value, like, no one's going to give us that. This is kind of where fans miss. They think we're going to get that DJ Moore deal, a 1st round pick, a 2nd, another 2nd, and a player to go down another 8 spots. Because we went down from 1 to 9. So when teams see, we can go 9 to 17, that's another 8 spots. Like, we better get a player, a 1st round pick. I'm like, no. The number 1 pick had the value, guys. Like, trading down from here, if we go down far enough, we could maybe get a 1st rounder. But what I'm looking for is a pick in the 2nd round.
Yes.
When I trade down, even if we have to include one of our 2nd rounders to swap those picks and come way up, that's my goal. There is trying to get higher in the 2nd round.
Yeah, like you said, I think the move for me personally would be for us to trade out of 9, get an additional 2nd round pick. I think that's what I would like us to do. Unless, like you said, we have Jalen Carter there for us, then we got. I mean,
I'd even include maybe Tyree Wilson there, because he's so gifted as well.
I kind of feel like everybody else. I don't think Poles is going to pass on Jalen Carter if he's at 9. I don't think Poles is going to pass that up. But if he does get drafted by the Seahawks or the Lions, then trade out of 9. Go back and get our 2nd round pick back, yo.
Just get our 2nd round pick back.
Get our 2nd round pick back.
I love it. I mean, skill position players. I mean, Bijan's one of those guys too. I talk about. I think maybe too high for a running back. But if there is an edge rusher there, Tyree Wilson on the board, I could definitely see Poles pulling the trigger. I could also see him falling in love with a guy like Lucas Van Ness or Nolan Smith. So that just comes down to, we're going to learn a lot about Ryan Poles in this draft. He's never made a 1st round pick. This is going to be his very first one. He's already traded down. I love it. Like, I was a little worried he was scared of trading down the first pick. I was like, because most people wouldn't do that. He went all the way down to 9 and got a bunch of stuff. Will he trade down again? I'd love it. If not, I just hope it's a great player. I mean, that's what I'm really hoping for.
Okay. Curious to get your thoughts on Nolan Smith. From the chat I've been reading online, people are saying that he is too small to play in. But I think that's the position that he played in college. So if he comes to the NFL, if he doesn't bulk up, he's that linebacker. But we already have enough linebackers. So what are your thoughts on Nolan Smith?
He's kind of that hybrid style player like Micah Parsons or Will Anderson. I mean, it's same thing. The people who are saying Will Anderson's a defensive end and Nolan Smith isn't, I don't get it because they're the same size, same athletic profile. Nolan Smith has all the tools to be a guy like Micah Parsons that can be dangerous rushing the passer on third downs, but he doesn't have the size right now to come in and be an every down defensive lineman. He would have to play some linebacker. He would have to probably play some off-ball linebacker, but then on third down, he could come in and rush the passer. But if we drafted him, we could just have him just like Dominique Robinson was last year, just a rotational guy as a rookie. He only comes in on third down and goes after the passer. Have him bulk up for a season or two. He adds 15 pounds of muscle, and then all of a sudden you're talking about a guy who's the size of Robert Quinn who can play defensive end. But it would be a work in progress. He's not going to add that weight overnight. It's going to take a season.
Right.
But he has all the tools. Nolan Smith's one of those guys who, to me, he has all the tools of Will Anderson. Just a little bit less technique and didn't have the production that Will Anderson did in college. But he has all the tools and was just as highly rated coming out of high school. So if you can get him later on, if you can trade down to 15 or 16, pick up another pick and get a guy like Nolan Smith, count me in. I'd love to see it.
That dude's going to be a problem.
But day one, people are right. Like, he's not going to be an every down defensive end. Can he bulk up, though? I think he has the frame for it. I think he has the frame to easily add 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. And then he's, 250? And all of a sudden, he's got pretty good weight out there all of a sudden. He can play defensive end.
Should be interesting.
Yeah, but he's insane athletically. I mean,
yes, he is.
Insane. But, man, I can't wait to see it. We're about a week from the draft when you guys are watching this. Still can't come soon enough. I can't thank my guy Vyyper for joining me, man. He will be with me for the NFL draft as well. Can't wait. Vype, do you have anything else to say to the people before you go, man?
Yeah. Some of y'all are crazy, okay? Let's just put it out there. Some of y'all are crazy AF. Listen, whoever the Chicago Bears draft, let's try not to overreact too badly, okay? Because we won't know anything until these players get in pads and start playing on Sunday. So if they draft your guy, celebrate. If they draft somebody else that you don't like, it's not the end of the world. Give them the time to develop.
Give him a couple years, Velus Jones.
Yeah, right? Velus Jones, I expect big things from this season.
Kyler Gordon.
Whoever we draft, calm down, y'all. They give them the opportunity to develop. Let's see how they look in on Sunday before we judge them from a draft night.
I guarantee you Ryan Poles has watched a lot more tape on whoever we draft than you have.
Guaranteed.
Vyyper, man, thanks so much for joining me, man. Much love, brother. Tell the people real quick again where they can find you. Follow this man on Twitter. Check out his YouTube for any tech stuff you need. He just helped me get these new Pixel Pro what are these? Pixel Bud Pros?
Yep, that's Pixel Bud Pro.
Yeah, a little case here. Drop in here, man. Charge them. Yeah, it's my man. I would take these to the gym every day. Well, I had to take a couple days off because I was sore my first day getting back in the gym. But,
that's right.
But hey, man, tell them where they can find you at, and great having you.
Appreciate you, man. Listen, it's pretty easy. All you gotta do is go into your whatever site you're on, type in the search bar, "The Man About Tech." You type in "The Man About Tech," you'll find Vyyper.
That's my guy, brother. Appreciate it, man. I can't wait till the draft. We'll have you back soon, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
What's up, guys? So I want to take a moment to welcome a special guest today, the man behind the Windy City Productions. I'm a huge fan. I credit this guy as an inspiration for starting my channel. It's an honor to chop it up with you finally. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and just in case there's someone out there who isn't familiar with your work, let them know where to find you.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on, Swift. I'm the Windy City Productions, as you said. My name is Rashab. I've run this channel since the past like 4 or 5 years, just talking about the Bears, news, reactions, highlight videos, as you guys know if you've been watching. So, you can follow me on Twitter at DWC Prods or on YouTube at the Windy City Productions. And excited to talk about the draft here with Swift.
Awesome, man. It's such a pleasure to have you. We'll talk
Yeah.
about the first round. That's obviously the thing that's coming up first, and we only have one pick in the first round. So what would you rather do in the first round? Would you rather us trade down and acquire more picks, or is there a guy there that if he's on the board at 9, you couldn't pass him up?
Yeah, so I'd want to go offensive line in the first round just because I think that protecting Justin Fields obviously is the biggest priority for a lot of us. Last year the offensive line clearly was not good enough on both sides, in the interior as well. So in the ideal world, I think trading back to maybe 17 and getting an offensive lineman there that would still be available at 9 would be the best possible scenario. Like, so if you want to go back to 17 with the Steelers or go back to 16 with the Commanders or wherever you want to go in the, mid first round, pick up Darnell Wright, pick up maybe Broderick Jones is still there. Maybe Paris Johnson Jr. is probably not going to be there at that point, but I think that you can't really go wrong with offensive line. So that's going to be my number one, priority. But I also have to say, if Jalen Carter is there at pick number 9, like, it's going to be so hard to pass up on this guy, even with all the question marks off the field, even with him, not having a good pro day, with how big of a need the Bears have at 3 technique, and with Matt Eberflus being, a defensive minded coach that needs a 3 technique to have a very good defense. Like, I don't know if Ryan Poles is going to pass up on Jalen Carter at that spot.
It
So
would be
it is
super
kind of
hard.
tough
I
to
mean,
say. It would be, yeah, and it all comes down to like the evaluations, right? Like, we don't, as fans, we don't know like all the stuff going on behind the scenes. We don't know his interviews. We don't know, the police reports or whatnot. So whatever happened with the off the field stuff, that's gonna be key in determining where he's gonna go. So
that's important
I'd
to
be cool
remember.
with, those. Yeah, yeah, I'd be cool with those two, positions. Or even, I'm not the biggest hater of like going cornerback either. I know that we don't necessarily need cornerback as our number one need right now, but Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez, man, like 2 really good cornerbacks. Like, that's also another spot where I also could not be mad with the Bears going there. So
Yeah, I think Poles values cornerback. It's a premium position. It's definitely an option that he could go cornerback. With Jalen Carter, if you can get the best player in the draft at number 9 that fits the biggest hole on your defense, it's hard to pass that up. But I'm also a fan of let me trade down, let me get a guy like you mentioned. If I could trade down, acquire another pick, and get Darnell Wright or Broderick Jones, that's an A plus day one for me. That's probably my dream scenario.
100%, man. I mean, I think that any place the Bears go, you can't really go wrong with how many needs we have right now. But especially, the high value positions like defensive line, like, cornerback, like offensive tackle, like those should be areas that we're definitely attacking, in the first round. So
And
I'd agree with that for sure.
yeah, perfect, perfect. And then the biggest thing though to me is day 2 might be an even bigger day because we have 3 picks in that range where you can acquire potentially 3 starters. And to me, the reason why I like the angle you went with taking a tackle in the first round, if it works out right, is because I like how deep the draft is at the other positions we could attack there in that second round area. Cornerback, like there's great players there still going to be on the board like Julius Brents. Defensive end, you're going to have players on the board like Keon White or Derek Hall. And then if you look at like center or defensive tackle, even both of those are going to have players on the board that you can take that could come in and be day 1 starters. Do you have any guys in that day 2 range that you have your eye on that you really like?
Yeah, a lot of them. I mean, I think we're very lucky to have 3 picks on day 2 because a lot of people say the talent in this class is mostly from like pick number 20 to pick number 50-ish. Not that that's the best talent, but like there's the deepest talent in that range. So the fact that we do have 3 picks there for the first time in like a long time is very, very important. Actually, we had 3 picks last year too on day 2, but regardless, like it's good to have these picks. And like you kind of mentioned, going edge would be a big, place for the Bears because we need edge right now. So guys that come to mind are Derek Hall, from Auburn. Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame is very clean, I feel like, where his overall, prospect, evaluation is pretty good, right? Because he was very productive at Notre Dame. He had the all-time leading sacks there, at Notre Dame. He also tested really, really well. He fits in the 4-3 defense. So I think that Isaiah Foskey would be one of my preferred edge guys on day 2. But there's also other guys out there as well. A lot of guys that tested really well. BJ Ojulari, if he falls a little bit, although some people think he's maybe not the best fit, in a 4-3 defense, but whatever. Like, there's a lot of guys that tested really, really well this year at the combine. And with how much edge depth there is this year, we're basically guaranteed to have a top level edge fall to us, at pick number 50, 53, 61, 63. So I'd definitely be looking to go edge. Cornerback too, as you mentioned, right? Like cornerback is a big need. Julius Brent's tested really well. Cam Smith, there's other guys out there too. We need another outside corner. I feel like, if you want to put Kyler Gordon at nickel, or if you want to, draft a nickel cornerback, put Kyler Gordon full time outside. I think either option could work well because Kyler Gordon also, I mean, I feel like people are forgetting about him because he started out the year a little bit poorly last year. Finished the season strong though, right? Like the last like 4, 5, 6 games, he actually had a really good, maybe not really, really good play, but like he improved big time in many different areas. So I'm still like not giving up on Kyler Gordon, but we could still use another cornerback because Kindle Vildor, at this point, I'm not sure if Ryan Poles is really high on him because he was a pace guy. So that's an option. You could go center too, like Luke Whippler, John Michael Schmitz. I know is a dream of many Bears fans, but is he going to fall to you at pick number 55? Like, I'm thinking probably not, right? Like JMS. What do you think about where JMS is going to land in the draft?
I think he could potentially go in the first round. I think his stock is really
Yeah.
up after the Senior Bowl. Either way, I don't think he falls to our spot in the second round. I think
Yeah.
maybe Tippmann or Whippler could. We also
Mhm.
have the option of a guy like Stromberg later in the draft or Jarrett Patterson. But I really like what you said at cornerback, too. Kendall Vildor is the guy that's probably on the outs. Kyler Gordon is a guy that they really loved what he did. He played outside, he played on the nickel, and he got better as the season went on. He had finished the season very strong, in my opinion. He's a guy I'm very high on going forward. But we can still add a guy, and they have options at either one. If you want to move Kyler outside, we can add a nickel corner like a Kytrell Carter or a Tre'Davious Hodges Tomlinson. But there's also a ton of guys on the outside if you want to leave Kyler at the nickel. Defensive end as well, like you said, tons of talent there. Guys like Derek Hall. I haven't heard a lot of people mention Isaiah Foskey. He doesn't get enough love. He's a guy, he's local.
Yeah.
All he needs to do is add a little bit of bulk, and that guy can really be good at the next level. I also want to throw Zach Harrison out there. I think he has that freakish athleticism and the long arms that Ryan Poles loves.
Yeah, if you want to talk about a 3 technique, like defensive
Ooh, yeah.
tackle, I mean, yeah, Adetomiwa Adebawore, I know he's going in like the first round of a lot of mock drafts now, but there's many scenarios where he could fall to like, the pick number 30 to 40 range, where if you want to trade up if you are Ryan Poles, I know like Bears fans are kind of like having, PTSD from Ryan Pace trading up way too much, trading away all of our picks. So like maybe Bears fans do not want to trade up this year, but guys, we have so many picks this year, right? Like we have the capital to trade up if we want to and not have that hamper us this year, right? So if you want to give up, maybe pick number 55 or whatever and like a mid-round pick to go up to 40, get Adetomiwa Adebawore, who's like a physical freak, a guy that could fill in a 3 technique for us. That would be fantastic. I mean, that would be really, really good for the Chicago Bears. I know the Bears have already met with him multiple times. They've already talked with him about playing 3 technique at Notre Dame at Northwestern, so that could be an option. Maybe Keanu Benton too from Wisconsin, who's probably not a 3 technique, but like a 1 technique, nose tackle kind of guy that could be really good against the run. Big, strong guy, pretty athletic too. Like he tested super well. So those are probably my 2 favorite guys. There's probably other guys out there as well that I haven't, maybe looked into that much, but at 3 technique, like definitely Adetomiwa Adebawore, like I think that would be a dream of many Bears fans.
That's
in
my
the
guy,
second
man.
round.
Yeah, I love him. He's been one of my favorite prospects of this entire draft. He absolutely tore up the combine, too. I actually wasn't happy about it because I think he might go too high now. But there are a lot of other 3 tech options out there. You mentioned one of them. I do think Keanu Benton, I think he's athletic enough that he could play the 3 tech. He is more of a nose tackle with how powerful and big he is, but he's also very athletic and moves well for his size. Another couple guys there, Gervin Dexter out of Florida, I think he could fit the same role. Keon White, I think you'd probably move him to 3 tech. And then a guy that slept on, Carl Brooks. There's a lot of options there on day 2 for that position as well. And it's another reason why, as much as I love Jalen Carter, if we don't fix the right tackle spot, that's going to be a big issue. I just wonder if Ryan Poles has that mindset of, I can find a right tackle on day 2 or day 3, and he's eyeing a guy like Wanye Morris or something, just like he did last year with Braxton Jones.
That could be the case. I mean, last year, like I had not even heard of Braxton Jones really until the draft started. So he plays really well last year for us, like actually starts the entire season, which I don't think anybody expected. So I'm not gonna try to write off Ryan Poles, if he does pass on like a first round tackle, because we've seen him already have success with a late round tackle last year. And also Ian Cunningham too. Like, he's coming from an organization that has drafted offensive linemen even late and has had success. Like, Jordan Mailata was I think a 7th round pick, right? So
Yep.
you can find offensive linemen really anywhere, but as you guys know, like, there's a high percentage chance of hitting on them if you do select them earlier in the first round. So I still would prefer to have us go offensive tackle first round, but like, I'm not gonna be totally mad if we do go, Jalen Carter, JSN, maybe whoever we go in the first round, then go tackle on day 2, day 3. So
Yeah, we'll learn a
it's gonna
lot
be a
about
guessing
Ryan
game, really, like
Poles.
100%. And that's the thing. We also do not really know his drafting habits yet, because it's
Hmm.
only been one draft, right? So I've seen people online talking about, Ryan Poles usually does this on day 2, this on day 3. Like, we don't necessarily have a big sample size to even judge that on. So
And
it's still
he's
gonna
never
be kind
made a
of a guessing
first
game
round
for us.
pick, so we'll learn a lot this year.
No,
Once this draft's over, we'll figure out how he feels about the right tackle
yeah,
position and the offensive line in whole, and what he does. He has so many picks in the top 150, more than we've had in probably the last 15, 20 years. I remember looking it up, but it's
yeah.
been a while. But we have a lot of picks, and he's going to be able to put his stamp on this roster. That's what I'm most excited about. I just right now, that's where we're at. We don't know. A week from now, we'll know. So I can't wait.
It's gonna be a lot of fun for sure. It's probably the most anticipated draft for Bears fans in like a long, long time. Probably since 2021, obviously, because in 2021 we had a chance to draft a quarterback, but also that year, like, we didn't have this many picks in rounds like 2, 3, 4, 5. So
Yep.
it's gonna be a lot of fun on draft night for sure.
Yeah, we traded up twice, and then we really didn't have hardly any after that. We traded
Yeah,
up for Fields and Tevin Jenkins, and then it was like, well, now we don't have anything left,
yeah.
guys. So,
We don't have anything else to do, but I like the pick that year. Obviously,
of
it
course,
turned
yeah.
out pretty good for the Bears.
I love both of them. I mean, they're two of my favorite players on the whole team, so I'm not mad. That was Ryan
Yeah.
Pace's goodbye gift to us, trying to
Final
make up
draft,
for
yeah.
his other
Goodbye.
stuff. Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, in the last 4 years, we've only had one first round pick, I think, right? Like,
Yep.
we traded away all of our first round picks from 2019 to 2020 for Khalil Mack. We traded away, 2022 first round pick for Justin Fields, which were, at the time we viewed them as pretty good deals. And I still think they were,
Yeah.
good deals for what we got, Khalil Mack and Justin Fields. But as we know, like, you cannot build a long-term sustainable franchise without having those first round picks. So I think getting a first round pick this year and also having multiple first round picks next year, that's going to be huge, right? Because next year, if the Carolina Panthers totally bust on their quarterback, and even if they don't bust, like, a lot of good quarterbacks in the rookie year still don't win that many games. Like, have a top 10 pick again, get Marvin Harrison Jr. potentially, or just whatever
It's
talent you want to get
a
next year.
big
So
draft next year too. So yeah, I'm
yeah,
rooting
it
against
is.
the
I mean,
Panthers all year long, no matter what.
100%, dude. My opponents next year are gonna be whatever team the Bears play against, whatever team the Packers play against, and whatever team the Panthers play against. So it's gonna be
100%.
fun.
Yep. And then what did you want to go into next?
You want to talk about some, round 3 guys or round 4 guys,
Yeah.
or
Oh
we
yeah.
are yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I think in terms of, what players I want, so I actually did a mock draft. I've done multiple this year, but did like a big one last weekend. So if I want to talk about those guys, I guess I could go through a few of them. I want us to get a running back at some point, just because even though we have, Herbert, we do have Deontay Foreman. I feel like the RB3 position could be improved, and there's so many running backs this year, like a Chase Brown from Illinois, who I really like, who I watched him play, every game last year. He carried the team on his back. Very fast guy. I think he fits his own scheme pretty well. So Chase Brown would be a pretty big, acquisition for the Bears, I think, where he could also, start if he needed to. And there's also so many other running backs there as well.
Another
This
really
entire
deep
draft is
class.
just
Yeah.
like, yeah, very deep draft at running back. So like, that's why you also don't have to go like Bijan Robinson at number 9, which I've seen some people do. I don't think that would make a lot of sense for the Bears, because there are so many, good running backs on day 3.
Yeah, and we have 6
But
picks
there's
total
also,
on day 3. So we have
yeah,
2 fourth rounders, two fifth rounders, and 2 seventh rounders. So a lot of potential for Ryan Poles to move around the board or add a lot of players, take a lot of shots on guys on day 3.
100%. Yeah, I mean, the volume of picks we have, you could double dip too at certain positions. Like, if you want to get another edge, if you already got an edge on day 2, you could go, get another developmental edge on day 3. Like a Yaya Diaby might be available for you in round 4, round 5. Very athletic guy. Has pretty long arms, very high motor as well. I really like what I saw out of him on tape. So that could be an option. If you want to look at receivers, there's Xavier Hutchinson, who I picked in my mock draft from Iowa State, who is very underrated. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about him right now for whatever reason. I think this entire receiver class is going a little bit under the radar because there's not necessarily like those big stars at the top behind like a JSN. So that could be an option, on day 3. And as we Bears fans know, like, you can find solid value on day 3 of the draft at receiver. Like we got Darnell Mooney, recently in 2020, he's turned into a pretty good receiver for us. And there's been so many hits across the league on guys, that were drafted in rounds 4 or 5. So you have any receivers in mind on
Oh
day
yeah,
3 that you like?
I think it's a perfect draft for that. Like JSN is the only guy really at the top of the draft, and a lot of us Bears fans like him even more because of the chemistry with Justin Fields that he has pre-built in. That's something you don't see every day and you can't get every year, having a quarterbacks guy coming out of college. But after that, it's more of a deep draft. Like you said, not really top heavy, but on those day 3, there's a lot of guys. Jaden Reed from Michigan State could be there. Andre Yoshivas. Jonathan Mingo is a guy that's slept on a lot, but I think he actually goes day 2, so I can't mention him. But like you said, Xavier Hutchinson, I think another guy like him is Dontavian Wicks, Rashee Rice. There's a lot of guys there, both guys out of Cincinnati. They're both small speedsters, Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker. They're both burners that have both been in for top 30 visits. There's just a lot of guys. Last year, wide receiver was super top heavy and didn't have as much depth. This year, it's not top heavy, but it has that depth. So I want to wait on wide receiver. The only guy that's the exception is JSN.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean JSN just has the route running and the ability he showed in college football where he could be, taken in the first round.
It's not something I'm pulling for. I'm not like, hey, I want us to draft JSN. But at the end of the day, if that's the pick, I'm probably going to get his jersey right away. I'm going to be a huge fan,
Yeah.
and I'll be super excited about the potential of our offense. Nobody will be talking about Fields doesn't have any weapons now. People are going to be saying,
Yeah.
holy cow, Fields has so many weapons now. So it is something I think is a possibility, but I think it's probably not very likely. I'd say we probably go in the trenches, offensive or defensive line.
You also want to go like, offensive line on day 3, like a guard. There's so many guards out there. Like Andrew Voorhees, right? Like he was supposed to go in like round 1 or 2, suffered like a very bad injury at the combine,
I think he
right?
tore
Where
his
he's
ACL,
falling to
yeah.
like he tore his ACL, which is, horrible to see. You don't want to ever see that for, a guy working out at the combine. But he could be going down to like round 4, round 5, which if he has the upside, which he does, like that could be a really good pick for Ryan Poles on day 3 with all the picks you actually have.
I have thought about
Yeah.
that. He's a guy, when you have a torn ACL, he's not going to go as high in the draft. If he falls far enough, he's really talented. I'd definitely take a shot.
It is also good to have high level depth as well, right? Because the Bears have basically never had a year where they've had like a solid like 8 offensive linemen on the roster, right? Where a team like the Eagles, a team like the Packers, they always have like 8, 9 offensive linemen that could start
When was the
at
last
any
time we had a
time,
solid
which is why
6th?
never. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had an actual good offensive lineman. Maybe 2018, like that was decent that year, but even then, like the defense handled the load that year. So like it wasn't like we had Charles Leno that year who went to the Pro Bowl, I know, but like he's never been viewed as like a top 3, top 5 offensive lineman, offensive tackles. So
Yeah, I mean, our offensive line is just, it hasn't been good in a long, long time. So it is something selfishly, I do kind of want us to invest more in that offensive line. We all want to see Justin Fields' growth, and we're all tired of hearing the excuses. And none of us want to see him drop back 3 steps and have rushers in his face again this year. So I think all of us do want the offensive line to be addressed, and then the defensive line also. We do have flexibility because we have so many picks and it's a deep draft. That's why you hear fans talking about JSN and Bijan and all these other guys. But I think at the end of the day, we want the trenches fixed first, and we want Justin Fields to be able to succeed because we're all big fans of Justin Fields.
yeah, I mean, we have to set up a situation next year where he's not going to have any excuses, if he fails, right? Like, we want to know this year if Justin Fields is our franchise quarterback or not, because next year, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of quarterbacks at the top that if Justin Fields totally, bombs, that they could go after those top quarterbacks. But being a big Justin Fields fan, just like you, like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that with the proper supporting cast, he is going to light it up, have a really good season, be the best Bears quarterback of all time. I mean, that's a very possible outcome with how bad our quarterbacks have been, and with no supporting cast to speak of the last 2 years, he's still done some pretty incredible things. So
You set yourself up to fix the trenches in the draft. So I'm just hoping he follows through, makes at least 3 to 5 picks out of the 10 picks on the offensive and defensive line combined.
and even last year, like I know it was like late day 3 picks, but we had half of our draft last year spent on the offensive line. Again, mostly on day 3, but we had like 4 or 5 picks on day 3 on the offensive line. So I think that Ryan Poles does get that you have to invest in the offensive line, defensive line to get success. So I do fully agree. Like he's gonna do that in the draft this year. Like as we talked about, like round 1 probably is gonna be offensive line or defensive line. Day 2 as well. Like there's so many guys there that could be pretty good fits for the Bears. So
I love it, man. Before we go, did you have any other points or anything else you wanted to touch on before we got out of here?
yeah, not really. I'm just super excited, man. Like after all the speculation, like we're only a week away now. It's gonna be so much fun to see what Ryan Poles actually does. So many different directions he could go. And Bears fans, just the only thing I ask is to have a little bit of patience because I don't think next year we're gonna be any sort of contenders for like a Super Bowl. So like don't have like overly high expectations next year. I think we will be much improved. Not contender level yet, but I do think that Ryan Poles is building something very special for the long term. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see that play out.
I couldn't agree more, man. I haven't been this excited. I mean, I was super excited back in like 2003, about 20 years ago, but this is the most excited I've been since then, and I think we have even a better direction that we're heading long term. We actually have a quarterback and we have a GM that I have ultimate faith in. He does have to nail this draft, though. It's very important. This is a huge draft for our franchise's future, and we're a week away. I can't wait, man. But it was awesome. It was a pleasure having you on here. Tell the people again one more time where they can find you.
Yeah, so just look up the Windy City Productions on YouTube. You'll find me, or on Twitter if you want to search up DWC Prods, PRODZ. You can follow me on there as well. And thanks for having me on, man. I'll have you on my channel as well, sometime in the next few months. It was a lot of fun for sure.
For sure, brother. I mean, after the draft, we'll have plenty to talk about. So sure, we'll have to link up again sometime, man.
Sounds good, man.
All right, I'll bear down, brother.
Bear down.
What's up, guys? Swift here. Today I have Darnell Washington's baby daddy. Just kidding. My man Sciorty in the house from Bears Country Productions. Introduce yourself to everybody and tell them where they can find you at.
Man, Swifty, thank you very much for having me on, man. It's been a pleasure. This is a pleasure to come on your show because I've had you on. I have Bears Country Productions as my own channel. I've been on the Barroom Network. I'm going back to Bears Country Productions now, and much love to the Barroom Network and Aldo for all the opportunities. And you can check me out there. So, Swifty, I mean, it's crazy because we started our channels in a similar fashion, at a similar time, I should say, and it's been fun to watch you grow your channel like you've done. And I just want to tell you first off, man, I've said this to you privately before, but I'm proud of you, bro.
Appreciate it, man. I appreciate that. Much love. A lot of hard work, man. We're talking about the Bears draft today, of course, NFL Draft 420 special. I know you have a favorite edge that's a guy who's not a first-round target and also a guy that I really love, freak athlete. You want to go ahead and tell me about that guy?
Zach Harrison, man. 6'5", 269, 36 and a quarter inch arms, 4.47 yard, 40-yard dash. How can that guy fail in the NFL? Is he a John Theory? I don't know, but he's a freak athlete. How can that fail?
Yeah, he has a little bit of Javon Curse in him, man. He has that elite length and athleticism that Ryan Poles loves. So he is a guy that I think could be a Bears target. I really like him as a day 2 pick.
Everything that people are looking for in Tyree Wilson, right? The same measurables almost. What I think about this draft is quantity over quality. So if you can get someone similar to like a Tyree Wilson a little bit later in the draft, maybe with a trade down, again, hopefully that's my perfect scenario.
And then I know you have a guy in the first round that you really like too. Big, bulky, out of Iowa.
If we stayed at 9, I'm not sure if I would like this guy, but if we did trade down into like with Pittsburgh, get into 17, maybe get the 32 back, maybe trade down with Tampa to 19, or even the Commanders at 16. Lucas Van Ness reminds me of Dan Hampton. And that's what when I put on the tape, that's what I see. They're almost the same size. Lucas Van Ness is 6'5", 275 pounds. And Dan Hampton was 6'5", 264 pounds. In his playing day, that translates to the NFL today, as far as Van Ness. Is he a 3-tech? Is he a defensive end? Is he an edge rusher? I don't know. but he has played both in college. And whenever I see the tape on him, I just think Dan Hampton. And that, as a Bears fan, that kind of warms my heart. Is he good? What do you think?
Man, I love that. I haven't heard anybody say Dan Hampton yet. I've heard Bosa comparisons, TJ Watt comparisons. The guy with that Herculean frame that just, I mean, absolute just killer with the bull rush. He does need to add more pass rush moves to his repertoire in order to be a complete player, but I think he does have the upside. He can play on the edge or the 3 tech, like you said. He's a guy who could play either one of those spots.
He's got that build to him that you saw the versatility that the Bears had with Dan Hampton, being able to move him around on the line. And me as a Bears fan, just seeing like that player comp with Van Ness to Hampton kind of reminds me of the golden days where, like, is it possible that this draft could be comparable to one of those serious Super Bowl winning team drafts? And a player like Van Ness might be someone that is not necessarily, on the radar as that by most Bears fans, but if the comp fits, maybe it could be. So
I love it, man. He's one of Jordan Silvera's absolute favorite players in the draft.
I know that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he had me watch some tape on him because I remember back when nobody was talking about him, and he's a guy. The more tape you watch on him and you see what he's done to some of the best offensive tackles and guards and centers in all of college football, and his upside is up there where you're getting a guy whose best football is ahead of him, and I think he's going to be a stud. I love it. And speaking of someone who could be a good player but is slept on a little bit, basically just due to one trait, which is his arm length, but he's a guy who does have potential to play 3 tech. I don't know if Poles will like him because of those short arms, but he's the guy that I think Eberflus might like, but Eberflus also recently has came out and said he really, really cares about length, and then we signed Tremaine Edmonds, so it's tough, but I like this guy as well. Kalijah Cansey, give me your thoughts on him.
From what I've looked at, like he's one of the top college 3 techs in the draft. But those arms scare the hell out of me, just like they do you, Swifty, and most people. But could he become the first player with that arm length to be like a solid interior defensive lineman? History says no, but damn it, he's like the favorite. He's like my favorite. I hate it.
It's tough because it's the same way I feel about Sciorty, where if his arms were 2 inches longer, he'd be my favorite tackle in this draft. But
I love a tackle.
That arm length is killer, and we know that's huge at tackle. As an interior player, I tend to think it's not as big of a deal, but that's the thing. Cansey's arms are that much shorter than even a guy like Sciorty's, where it's like, oh, people are out there giving him the T-Rex comparisons and stuff. But he's a guy who's popularly mocked in the first round. He had an insane performance at the combine. For a guy his size, he's an incredibly agile and quick penetrator in the interior defense. If he can get underneath people and if he can penetrate, I think there's possible, like, some of these bigger guards are just going to maul him. But if he can get in there and do it at an NFL level, he's going to be a guy that's successful and makes a lot of money because teams pay for interior pass rushers.
Man, what would happen if he just became the guy that nobody thought?
You don't like to compare guys to Aaron Donald, but with
especially when they come from the same school, right?
It's like his size, his weight, his arm length, his arms are just a tiny bit shorter. Aaron Donald's the closest comp. His arms aren't that much longer than Donald's, and he has the same size, the same quickness. They're very similar style of players, which is why he draws so many comparisons to him.
Overall, I think his arms are like an inch shorter per arm. So, does that really make that much of a difference? Because what he reminds me of is Tommy Harris. I don't know. Okay. It's like the burst that he has. Maybe it's the kind of the body.
Tommy. Yeah, Tommy. When Tommy burst through the line, I see that there. Tommy was more powerful a little bit, but yeah, that burst and that quickness off the line. That first
Tommy
step.
Harris came off the assembly line into the NFL with a little more bulk to him. But
shout out to Tommy Harris, though.
Man, that play that Tommy Harris just right through the line and got to the running back before they even got the handoff.
Yep.
Was my God. It said it all for Tommy Harris, didn't it?
He had such a bad injury. Love you, Tommy. That's an injury that's not. Everyone talks about the Johnny Knox injury. The Tommy injury didn't look as bad so
Right.
it isn't one that people think about. But when you have your whole hamstring ripped off the bone, he just never was the same
Never
player
recovered.
again. And like,
Hall of Famer
yep.
without that.
Oh man, he's my favorite defensive tackle I've ever watched. Love it.
I think
The
I
real
agree with you
deal
on
right
that.
there. And then I know there was one other thing we wanted to talk about, and it's fans frequently talk about different players, different fits. Bears fans are never happy overall. But I know
Right.
you have a point here that bottom line, it really doesn't matter who the Bears draft as long as they're a good player. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, this is kind of the question I want to pose to you, Swifty. And I like to pontificate. If anybody has watched me on the ballroom or even on my own channel, I like to pontificate. But I would like to just pose the question to you, Swifty. Does it matter who the Bears draft if they stayed at 9 or traded down, if that player, said player, became a Hall of Famer? No matter, let's just pose the question. If the Bears drafted JSN at number 9 and he became a Hall of Famer, whether it was on the Bears or another team, would it matter? Because when you look at the Devontae Adams trade, they got 2 first-round picks for him. Let's also look at who is on the books for next year as wide receiver, who has a contract past this season.
Just DJ Moore and Velus Jones.
And that goes for kind of any said player there. What if they drafted Cansey at 9? And we all the whole world would be, all of Bears world would be like, what the hell? But if he became a Hall of Famer, would it matter? In polls I trust, and I think you do too, Swifty.
Yes, sir.
And if that player works out, no matter who it is, JSN, Paris Johnson, freaking Will Levis. I'm not Will Levis.
No,
Will Anderson,
anyone but that.
Will
Anyone but
Anderson,
that. Anyone
Will
but
Anderson.
that. Yeah. So
talking
you
about
actually
Will
made me
Levis.
change my answer now because I was gonna say 100% no. It doesn't matter as long as if that player ends up being a great player. But
So I
now
said
I gotta
Will Levis.
change it because no, I don't care how good Will Levis ends up
Will
being.
Anderson.
No, but dead on. It doesn't really matter who the player is, what position it is, even if it's someone like B. John Robinson too. Like, I mean,
Right.
if he ends up being one of the best players in team history, nobody cares where he was picked or why. So yeah, I mean, best player available, and I'm a fan of a trade down, man.
I am a big fan of a trade down. That's my hope. There's 3 teams I'm seeing there, with the Commanders, with the Buccaneers, with the Steelers. God, wouldn't it be great? What do you think of the value is of the Steelers trading with us from 17 to 9? Would it be worth 17 and 32 to get to 9?
Probably not. I've had that talk. That's what I'd want. I mean, that's the dream. Probably not. I'd say it's probably something like 17 and 49. I have went on to say that I would be okay. I want 32 enough that I would give up one of the picks in the 60s and give up 9 and say 64 for 17 and 32. And then if you could get another 4th rounder from them, or a 5th rounder, something like that, or maybe even 2 more picks. But I would include another pick in order to make the value fair and get it to line up, if that's what we have to do to get that 32 pick.
Man, whatever's going to happen, I think we all kind of have this feeling that we're going to have a lot more picks by the time this draft is done, right?
Yep. I'm so excited for the draft. I can't wait. I'll probably do another show after the draft. I'll try to plan it a little bit better. By then, we'll know who our players are and who we can talk about and all that. Can't wait to have you back, my man.
Swifty, thank you so much for having me on, man. I appreciate you from podcaster to podcaster, for real. And anytime you'd like to have me back on, please, you got my number. Just let me know.
Heck yeah. Bears Country Podcast, guys. Check them out. Bear down, Dan.
Bear down.
And fuck off, Shorty. Right now, I think the biggest takeaway about this NFL draft is we don't know if Poles values the defensive or the offensive line more. Think about it like this. I expect them to spend more draft capital on the defensive line, but then also think about another point I made previously. Right tackle is a position that plays every single snap. It's also more common to take tackles higher in the draft. Meanwhile, defensive linemen are going to rotate. But another point, offensive linemen in this scheme don't have to be perfect. This scheme is meant for athletic players, and Ryan Poles has already proven he can find tackles late in the draft. This makes it so hard to figure out what Poles will do next week. He's never made a first-round pick, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. Most of what we know about Ryan Poles is based off what he's told us and what he did in last year's draft. It was such a small sample size, and he was handcuffed last year. He didn't have a first-round pick and only had 6 picks total before trading down and acquiring more draft capital. He also was building a foundation to this football team and had to choose the personalities and people very carefully. It's hard to bring in a rookie with character concerns when you're establishing a culture and laying a foundation. Now we are a full year into the process. Poles is putting his stamp all over the roster, and his hands are untied this offseason to do whatever he feels will improve this roster the most. Sitting here today, I think the first round pick comes down to one of 3 positions: defensive line, cornerback, or offensive tackle. I think one of those 3 positions will be taken on day 1 with our first round pick, and it's also very likely the other positions will be addressed on day 2. I would be very surprised if it was any other position, and I'm still rooting for a trade down. For the first round, I think right now the names to pay attention to are Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson if they fell to number 9. After that, I think it's Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, Darnell Wright, Miles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness, Nolan Smith, Christian Gonzalez, and Devin Witherspoon. And then the final thing I wanted to say is you can't fall in love with any one player in the NFL draft process, especially in a class this deep. Trust the process. I said it last year, but a lot of fans were so mad that Poles didn't take George Pickens. Look now. We have DJ Moore and Chase Claypool and 10 picks going into this draft. This class is so deep, and Poles has given himself ultimate flexibility moving forward. Trust the process. I will be breaking down every single pick we make next week, and I will be live with some NFL draft coverage. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's much different than my daily videos and took a ton of work planning, recording, but most of all editing. Please hit that like button for me, especially if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I also have some bloopers and extra content at the end. I know this content is different from my usual content. I did take the same time editing it though. I took out so many I can't even count it. I really appreciate everyone who watches these videos. I hope this helps pass the time until the draft. I cannot wait. Stay tuned as I'll be here covering the most important offseason in Bears history with daily videos and in-depth coverage. Stay tuned, guys, and until next time, bear down. I'm gonna say Aldo in the house really loud though, so be ready for that.
Okay.
All right, let's roll.
And it's okay if I refer to you as Swifty?
Yeah, you can call me whatever you want, man.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries about that. Yeah.
Your Highness?
That could get a little awkward, but I mean, I won't tell you not to. I mean,
I just wonder, Ryan. I just wonder, Swift. I don't know why
I'm Ryan Poles now. I'm Ryan Poles.
No, Swifty, I just wonder. Fuck you, Swifty.
Fuck you, Shorty.
Did you even record that?
Yeah. I don't record it on StreamYard. That's what I said. I record on OBS.
Oh, no matter what you said, I couldn't disagree with you. I just had to say "fuck you, Swifty."
Fuck you, Swifty.
We think alike on that. I agree with you on that. That's. I'm sorry. Should we bleep that?
No, it's good. It's good. Clip in there anyway.
Oh, cool. Fuck you, Swifty. You don't have to now.
See, I got it now. All right.
Yeah,
I think you're ready, bro. You just overthinking it now.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm saying the right shit, so you ain't gonna. What the fuck is you talking about? I mean, that'll be a good show because we'll be like,
hey, yeah,
we'll be.
Hey, what's this man talking about? Y'all hear him talk about Musty?
Whose man's is this?
At the end, just be like, oh yeah, and re-sign Musty.
Musty forever, baby.
Swifty in the house.
Thanks for watching Swift Sports Network. Like and subscribe for daily Chicago Bears updates, knowledge over narratives.